Welcome back to Tampa City Council. I'd like to call this meeting to order. If we could have a roll call, please.
Carlson.
Here.
Hurtak.
Here.
Clendenin.
Here.
Henderson.
Present.
Vieira. Miranda. And Maniscalco.
Here.
We have a physical forum.
All right. There was a request to remove item, let me see. We're going to go right to the, yeah, let's open the 10:30 public hearings. We have a motion from Councilwoman Hurtak, second from Councilmember Carlson. All in favor? Aye. Aye? All right, so for item number 121, just a motion to withdraw. We have a motion from Councilwoman Hurtak, second from Councilmember Henderson. All in favor? Aye. All right, we're going to wait on that, and we're going to continue the second reading, so we'll go to item 106.
Ross Amos, Development Coordination.
Have you been sworn in?
I have.
You have? Okay. Has everybody been sworn in that's in the room that's going to speak? No? If you haven't been sworn in, please stand up. We'll swear you in.
And you see Dave Mechanic online too.
Yeah. Yeah, he was really.
I didn't get sworn in.
Okay, we'll take it.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to provide is the truth and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you.
All right, item 106. Mr.
Does
Salmon.
that count? Does that count, Dave? It looks like he isn't sure.
Yeah.
Okay, just want
Mr.
to make sure.
Mechanic, were you sworn in?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Sammons, go ahead.
Ross Amos, Development Coordination, presenting file number VAC 23-12 for second reading and adoption. It's proposed to vacate the east and west portion of the alleyway located north of Emily Street, south of Woodlawn Avenue, east of Tampa Street, and west of Florida Avenue within the plat of Pine Woods addition to Tampa subdivision. I'm available if you have any questions.
You have any questions for the gentleman? Nope. All right. Do we have an applicant for item number 106? Yes, sir. Please come on up, state your name at the lectern.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt St. Green. I am the representative for the applicant. Also, he's my husband. So,
All right. Any questions for the gentleman? Do we have anybody in the public that wishes to speak on item number 106? I see no one. Can we get a motion to close? Motion to close from Councilman Miranda, second from Councilwoman Henderson. All in favor? Aye. Councilmember Carlson, I believe you have 106.
Sure. Like to move item number 106, file number VAC 23-12. Ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption, ordinance of the city of Tampa. Do I need to read the whole thing?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I'm still on jet lag time. An ordinance of the city of Tampa, Florida, vacating, closing, discontinuing, and abandoning that east-west portion of alleyway located north of Emily Street, south of Woodlawn Avenue, east of Tampa Street, and west of Florida Avenue within the plat of Piney Woods addition to Tampa subdivision in the city of Tampa, Hillsborough County, Florida, as more fully described in section 2 hereof, subject to certain covenants, conditions, and restrictions as more particularly set forth herein, providing for enforcement and penalties for violations, providing for definitions, interpretations, and repealing conflicts, providing for severability, providing effective date.
We have a motion from Councilmember Harrelson. Do we have a second? We have a second from Councilmember Miranda. Please record your vote.
Motion carried unanimously with Vieira being absent.
You're good to go. Thanks.
have a good day. Thank you.
All right, item number 107. Yes, sir.
Zane Hussein, Development Coordination. Agenda item number 107, case REZ 22-126. This for second reading and adoption at the location 4509 West North A Street. Proposed rezoning from RS 50 residential single family to RM 18 residential multifamily. This being Euclidean, no site plan was required. I'm here for any questions.
Any questions for the gentleman? Nope. Applicant?
Good afternoon, Council. Steve Michelini representing the petitioner. There were no objections, and the staff found it to be consistent. We'd appreciate your consideration for approval.
Any questions for the gentleman? Nope. Do we have anybody in the public that wishes to speak on item number 107?
Second.
I see no one, and we have no one registered. Motion to close from Councilmember Miranda, second from Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Councilmember Miranda, 107.
Thank you, Chairman. Item number 107, RSZ 22-126, orders being presented for second reading and adoption. An orders rezoning property in general vicinity of 4509 West North 8th Street in the city of Tampa, Florida, and more particularly described in Section 1 from zoning districts classification RS50 residential single family to RM18 residential multifamily, providing an effective date.
We have a motion from Councilmember Miranda. Do we have a second? Second. Second from Councilmember Clendenin. Please record your vote.
Motion carried unanimously with Vieira being absent.
Thank you, council.
Thank you very much, sir. Next up, 108. Yes, sir?
Zane Hussein, Development Coordination. Agenda item number 108, case SU 22-07. This is being presented for second reading and adoption at the location 9612 North 26th Street. This is for a special use 2, approving a school in the RS60 or residential single-family zoning. Site plans have been turned in the city clerk's office. I'm here for any questions.
Any questions for the gentleman? Nope. Applicant? Do you have an applicant for 108? All right. Do you have anybody for public comment on number 108? We have anybody registered? Nope. We have a motion closed. Motion closed from Councilman Miranda, second from? Second from Councilwoman Hurtak. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Councilmember Henderson.
I move file number SU 2-22-07, an ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption, an ordinance approving a special use permit, SU 2, approving a school in an RS60 residential single-family zoning district in the general vicinity of 9612 North 26th Street in the city of Tampa, Florida, and as more particularly described in section 1 hereof, providing an effective date.
Your mic is not on.
We need your mic.
Oh, he just has me for that.
All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Miranda. Go ahead and record your vote.
Okay.
Record your
I
vote.
don't need to read it again.
No.
Motion carried unanimously with Vieira being absent.
All right. Item number 109.
Chair, we need to,
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, that's right, that's right. Let's hear 124 first because it ties into 109. So, yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Council. Nicole Travis, Administrator of Development and Economic Opportunity. And happy birthday again, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So item number 124 is a companion or needs to go before the second reading for item 109, which is a funding agreement it's a funding agreement with Richmond Hillsborough Apartments. The funding agreement is a result of the work that we've been doing with the developer and what we've been hearing in the community. This is a really desirable property that's on the corner of East Hillsborough and 22nd Street. The city initially tried to purchase the property, but the private sector scooped it up. Because of the location, its proximity to the Hannah City Center on an intensive commercial corridor, there is existing and future transit options. So this really is an ideal site for residential. This development is 100% affordable and it's therefore exempt from the Community Benefits Agreement ordinance. And even though they're not subject to the Community Benefits Agreement ordinance, this development team had multiple meetings with the community. And what's outlined in this funding agreement really was in response to what they heard from the community. The development initially was proposed at 456 units, but because of those community meetings, the units was reduced to 354 units. The funding agreement addresses improvements to be made on 22nd Street. That's an exhibit in the packet. Those improvements include extending the southbound turn lane. There will be a dedicated TPD office within the clubhouse and a separate entrance and restroom, which is all a part of crime prevention through environmental design standards and community policing commitments such as porch roll calls. The project will also be developed at the Green Building Standards, which addresses our sustainability. That's also outlined in a community benefits agreement. And most importantly, the funding agreement provides for an additional 50 years of affordability of this project. And so we're looking at either a 99-year affordability period or for the land being donated into the community land trust that we have been working on. Just so you understand in context what this means regarding other projects that we've participated on for affordable housing units, the Adderley, which is 128 units, goes up to 80% AMI. $2.2 million of city funds were provided for that. That's a 30-year affordability period, which means that there was a subsidy of $17,578 per unit. Belmar units was 100 units at 80% AMI. That was a $2 million contribution. And again, that's another 30-year affordability period. And then just recently, we had the public hearing on the 10 townhomes with the Pittman Group. That was a $3 million project that assists with land acquisition and construction. So when you look at the $12 million across the 354 apartment units that goes up to 120% AMI, you're looking at a 33,898 unit subsidy per unit for 99 years, or $342 per year in subsidy. So if you have any questions about the funding agreement, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions at this time? Thank you very much.
I appreciate your support.
Is that the completion of the presentation?
Yes, it's the conclusion of the presentation on the funding agreement. I can answer any questions, but I do need you to take, yes.
Yes. What was that, sir?
Motion to close?
No, we don't need to close. There's no public hearing. Yes, ma'am. Councilwoman Hurtak.
We talked about this, even though I did not support the project itself. The $12 million was really fascinating to me if this can go into the community land trust. And I know that you said that that is their hope once we get it off the ground, because it's not off the ground yet. But I don't know if the applicant is willing to make that promise publicly.
Well, the applicant is here, and you can certainly
Okay.
ask the applicant, but the development agreement provides for either 99 years, which is as long as we can do that legally, or the community land trust. And then that designation has to be made before the certificate of occupancy is received.
And from my understanding, we're far enough along with the community land trust
That it would be up before.
that it would be possible to do before the 2 years, which we're assuming they will get their COO.
That's the intent, and that's the hope.
All right. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so you're, just to follow on that, you're talking about a 99-year lease, and then the land reverts back to the city.
It's not a lease, and so it's a 99-year affordability term. And so at the end of the 99 years, should they want to sell the property and turn it to market, they could. But they're guaranteeing for as long as we legally can, which is 99 years, affordability period on the property.
Or we put it into community land trust and it's forever.
As long as the community land trust is there, yes.
Yes.
May I have a motion to move the resolution? So moved. Motion from Councilmember Clendenin. Do we have a second?
I'm sorry, what?
This is to move the resolution for item number 124.
For the subsidy.
I'll second it for a vote.
We have a motion from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Miranda. Roll call vote.
Clendenin,
Yes.
Henderson,
Yes.
Vieira, Miranda,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Hurtak,
Yes.
and Maniscalco.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Council.
I don't know if it was going to pass or not. That was a very quiet, okay.
I was wondering the same thing. I was like, what anticipation?
All right, back to item 109.
Good evening, Chairman, Council, LaShawn, Dock Development Coordination. And Council, item 109 is a rezoning. This is REZ 22-113. It's for the property located at 2302 East Hillsborough Avenue. The applicant is represented by Cammie Corbett, and this item is before you today for second reading. This is a request to rezone the property from CI Commercial Intensive to PD Planned Development. This is to allow for residential multifamily, personal services, retail sales, specialty goods, and business professional office uses on site. And I'm available, council, if you have any questions.
Any questions? Nope. Thank you very much. Do we have an applicant? Yes, ma'am?
Good afternoon, Cammie Corbett with the law firm of Hillward and Henderson, and I want to take this opportunity to thank council for the last vote that you just took on this financing agreement or the funding agreement. Richmond is committed to putting this into the land trust. The only caveat we have is it's not formed yet, and we need to make sure it comports with our lenders and everything, but we are in the spirit of that. We are agreeing to that. We'd like to thank the administration, Nicole and Abby and everyone for helping us along the way, and also would like to thank the community. We did have a lot of community outreach on this project. We did not please everyone. I think what we ended up with was a fair compromise that took into considerations everyone's input, and ultimately we have a good project before you. I do have our presentation from first reading. If anyone would like to see any element of that, we're happy to provide it, but out of respect for your time, we don't have further presentation.
I mean, why not? I'm kidding. Okay. I'm kidding. Any questions at this time? Do we have anybody that wishes to speak on item number 109? Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Please state your name, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Joy Dew. I am 50903 North 34th Street. And I am here before you to just ask, is there a way that we could follow up on their traffic plan that is coming out on 22nd? We know that that's one of the enhancements that they're providing, but we know that there's not going to be a bus pull-off. So the buses, Heartline is going to be blocking that road. And if you do have a copy of it, it's on page 60. Their plan is to have a painted median. And this painted median is not going to provide the safety that we're asking for, because, you know, when we're in traffic and someone's kind enough to allow you to come over, you get blindsided by the person that's traveling north or south. And I'm really asking for them to do that raised median, because it would force the drivers going north and south to be in a very structured lane. They can't jump over it. No one can go around the buses. What they're proposing is just a painted median that is going to be called a pullout. So you're going to have people coming out of the complex crossing over northbound traffic to get into this pullout. And they're going to have to park there and wait until they can get into southbound traffic. So now you have the possibility of a head-on collision, but if you have that raised median, it's going to prevent them from doing it. Again, no one is opposed to having affordable housing. We just want the best options available. And we know that the three things that they have asked, or that, you know, they're giving us with the financial agreement, is the TPD location, the parking, the traffic on 22nd, and then the enhanced energy efficient part. I just want the city to really ask them to put in writing what they're going to do, because in that brochure on page 60, it just shows a picture. It doesn't go into any detail. If y'all have the ability to require that or request that, I would ask that you just postpone and make them put it in writing. There's a lot of things that they're telling us verbally, but I don't see it in writing anywhere. And that's all that I have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Corbett, would you be able to address that regarding transportation? Or the concerns that she expressed?
When public comment concludes, I will have Michael Yates talk specifically about the transportation issue. The commitment to provide the transportation improvement is in the funding agreement you just approved.
Okay.
It's graphically depicted, but it's also described verbally as well. So it's a commitment both in the graphic, but also it's actually described in the agreement itself.
Okay,
already.
we'll wait for public comment to conclude, and then, yes, ma'am.
Hello, Council. Again, Robin Lockett. Totally agree with this project. What I found through the last meeting was there was an opportunity for the actual units, the project to be 6 levels versus the 3. We're in a crisis. right? So if we have developers that we have approved and they've gone through the process of getting everything approved, I just, with the lack of rentals and the availability of rentals, I would have loved to see it, if it's from the 3 stories to 4 or 5 stories, because we're in the crisis of needing housing for people to rent. So that's I agree with it. I agree with the scrutiny and everything, but I was unaware of just it being knocked down from 6 to 3 because we are in a crisis. So thank you for your time.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Keela McCaskill. I support both what Joy Dew and Robin just said. I had the opportunity from the first meeting to speak with Richmond Group, and it's a tough crowd when you come to East Tampa and everybody doesn't understand the dynamics, but a lot of conversation took place. There was a lot of changes that we requested. I did want to see the higher density, but I understood some of the residents that was within the 250 feet where you get the good neighbor notice. Their concerns is they wanted to look like a neighborhood. So Richmond, you heard the concerns. We didn't get it all that we requested, but I do believe that they did a fair effort to listen to the community, at least the neighborhood surrounding, and then it extended beyond. And I'm on the e-board of Than, so I even got the request from Than to participate. So I do believe they did a good attempt to make it all happen. As a new and learning developer, I understand you're not going to make everybody happy, but I was not in support of the project the last time, and I like to do everything where it's transparent. So I publicly said that I wasn't supporting it, and then today I'm here to publicly say that I would. Not only that, safety was a concern, and I had the opportunity to speak with Ms. Corbett to share some of the things that I believe that could help with the community, seeing that they are concerned with safety, and some of the things that we can do. The Public Safety Committee over in East Tampa recently came up with some great ideas, so we're hoping that with mobility, City of Tampa, the CRA, we can come together and find a way to support the project, and Richmond is on the ground doing the outreach to say they're supporting it as well. Not only that, as a realtor in this city, one of their projects is over on Grady Square. It was a signature project for me. I use it all the time as a model for what's coming in Tampa when they built it. So I was hoping that this project will be the wow factor for East Tampa. Out of all the developers that's in the city, Richmond is probably top tier of most of them. So this could be the signature project and a wow factor for East Tampa. So I want to support it. I want to see it happen. And I can't wait to see what the outcome is. And hopefully I have the next project that's the wow. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Anybody else for public comment? I see no one. We don't have anybody registered. Ms. Corbett, you said the other gentleman was going to clarify?
Yes, I'd like to ask Michael Yates to come up and just clarify what the improvement is and why he's proposed the improvement that he did.
And these are the improvements that are in writing.
They're already in writing in the funding agreement that you previously approved.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. If we could activate the overhead? Yes.
All right, can you see that okay?
Yes.
Good morning, Michael Yates with Palm Traffic. I guess it is afternoon now, right? So this is the improvements that are in the funding agreement that we referenced at the hearing. And so what we had proposed was extending this southbound left turn lane at Hillsborough Avenue. So this is Hillsborough Avenue right here, 22nd. This is our project driveway. This is Comanche. And so what we were doing is extending this southbound left that is extremely short today, and then doing a two-way left turn lane that serves both the southbound traffic at the project driveway and the northbound left traffic at Comanche. Those are both very low volumes. Peak hour total background traffic was less than 30 cars over the course of an hour, making each of those movements. So very low traffic, and then just striping back out in the transition area. The concern with putting out a raised median out there, on a two-lane undivided roadway like this, it really makes it difficult to make maneuvers. It introduces an object in the middle of the road. Particularly at night, you'll get people driving along that don't see a raised separator. So that's why we proposed it as striped. When we go through permitting and engineering, we're happy to let the engineering staff look at it, give us their opinion. We don't have real issues with some of this being raised, but from a safety standpoint, I think they're a little better striped. And yes, you're going to have some movements, but the volumes are relatively low. And again, the big part was being able to extend the southbound left traffic that gets the people out of the travel lane as they approach Hillsborough Avenue. So that's what I have is why we did it, the way we did it, and what we showed. Happy to answer any detailed questions.
Any questions? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes our public comment. May I have a motion to close? Motion from Councilmember Miranda, second from Councilmember Henderson. All in favor? Aye. Councilmember Clendenin, you were the last one to read. Oh, yes, sir.
I just like a comment first, and I think it's something that's been echoed before, is that in these projects, especially along these transportation corridors, I know we talked about development of Tampa. I too, as what we just heard about increased density along these corridors, I would have supported much higher density. And as developers come forward and they want to have these proposals along these, you know, if not in places like this, then where? I mean, this is exactly the type of project that we should have had increased density. I would have liked to have seen that, but I know we're far down that process. But in the future, as people come before council and they want to develop in these transportation corridors and these areas where we're moving people, I would highly support that. And that being said, I would be, you want to say something before I read it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. It's very funny because I completely agree, and this is actually the reason I'm gonna still vote no. Because, not because I don't think the project is good and needed, but because we absolutely need more density. And if I don't stand up for density, then I'm just allowing the next developer to say, okay, come on and do it. So I am thrilled that they worked with the community. I just would have liked to have seen a stair step. And so I think the project overall is a great project, but I just needed more density with it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I would like to move. Oh, somebody else wants to?
Yeah, I wanted to follow up with the fact that the density was the issue for the community. That was the very thing that Richmond Group did negotiate with them. And so when it comes to density, while it is important because we do need more housing, this is a predominantly minority community that have spoken. They didn't want the density, and Richmond listened to them, so I appreciate that, because that is where the compromise came into place, and the project hopefully will move forward with the 354-unit compromise.
All right. Councilmember Clendenin, if you'd like to read it, 109.
Yeah, I'd like to move file number REZ 22-113, an ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption, an ordinance rezoning property in the general vicinity of 2302 East Hillsborough Avenue in the city of Tampa, Florida, and more particularly described in section 1 from the zoning district classifications, CI commercial intensive to PD planned development, residential multifamily, retail sales, specialty goods, personal services, business and professional office, provided an effective date.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Councilmember Clendenin with a second from Councilmember Miranda. Please record your vote.
Motion carried with Hurtak voting no and Vieira being absent.
All right, thank you very much. We go to item 111.
Zane Hussein, Development Coordination. Agenda item number 111, case REZ 23-27. This is being presented for second reading and adoption at the location 605 South Albany Avenue. Proposed rezoning from RM16 residential multifamily to PD planned development residential single family attached. Site plans have been turned into City Clerk's office. I'm here for any questions.
Any questions for the gentleman? Do we have an applicant? Yes, sir.
Steve McElhaney representing the petitioner. We made the one correction that was requested by Natural Resources, revise those plans and return them into the city. I'm not aware of any other concerns or objections regarding this project. We respectfully request your approval.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody that wishes to speak on item 111? I see no one, and I don't have anybody registered. Councilmember Carlson. Oh, I'm sorry, motion to close from Councilmember Miranda, second from Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Councilmember Carlson.
I'd like to move file number 111, file number REZ 23-27, ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption of ordinance rezoning property in general vicinity of 605 South Albany Avenue in the city of Tampa, Florida, and more particularly described in section 1 from zoning district classification RM16 residential multifamily to PD planned development residential single family attached, providing effective date.
We have a motion from Councilmember Carlson, second from Councilmember Miranda. Please record your vote.
Motion carried with Hurtek voting no and Viera being absent.
All right,
Thank you, council.
thank you. Item number 112. Yes, sir.
Zane Hussein, Development Coordination. Agenda item number 112, case REZ 23-29. This being presented for second reading and adoption at the locations 2002 North 62nd Street, 2002 North 62nd Street, Unit 1/2, and folio number 159-881.0000. Proposed rezoning from RS50 Residential Single Family to IG Industrial General. This being Euclidean, no site plan was required. I'm here for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Hussein? Nope. All right, do we have an applicant for this item, item number 112? I see no one, and I don't have anybody registered. Motion to close from
Second.
Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Councilmember Hurtak, would you mind reading item 112?
Of course. 112, file number REZ 23-29, ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption, an ordinance rezoning property in the general vicinity of 2002 North 62nd Street, 2002 North 62nd Street, Unit 1/2, and folio number 159-881.0000 in the city of Tampa, Florida, and more particularly described in Section 1 from zoning district classifications RS50 Residential Single Family to IG Industrial General, providing an effective date.
Do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Miranda, please record your vote.
Motion carried unanimously with Viera being absent.
Thank you very much. Next up is item 113.
Agenda item 113, case REZ 23-30. This being presented for second reading and adoption at the locations 2502 and 2504 North Boulevard. This is a proposed rezoning from RM16 Residential Multifamily and RS60 Residential Single Family to PD Planned Development Residential Multifamily and all commercial neighborhood uses. Site plans were turned in the city clerk's office. I'm here for any questions.
Any questions? Nope. All right, do we have an applicant for item number 113? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'll be the applicant. William Malloy, 325 South Boulevard, Tampa, Florida. Council members, thank you for your consideration on this one. We had a very pleasant first reading, and I would like to not screw up the second, so I will be quiet now. Thank you.
Move the close. then.
Whoa. Wait a minute. Do we have any public comment on item 113? All right, we're going to keep it pleasant. Motion to close?
Second.
Move to close.
Motion from Councilmember Henderson, second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Councilmember Miranda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 113, file number REZ 23/30. Ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption. An ordinance rezoning property in general vicinity of 2502 and 2504 North Boulevard in the city of Tampa, Florida, more particularly described in Section 1 from zoning districts classification RM16 Residential Multifamily and RS60 Residential Single Family and PD Planned Development Residential Multifamily and all commercial neighborhood uses, providing an effective date.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Clendenin. Please record your vote.
Move the resolution. We have to
Wait.
vote.
Motion carried unanimously with Viera being absent.
All
Move
right.
the resolution.
Motion from Councilmember Miranda to move the resolution, second from Councilmember Henderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No, just not the resolution. Item number 114. Congratulations. Yes, sir.
Zane Hussein, Development Coordination, case REZ 23-44. This is being presented for second reading and adoption at the location 305 South Boulevard. Proposed rezoning from PD Planned Development to PD Planned Development Business Professional and Medical Office. Site plans have been turned in the city clerk's office. There was no revision sheet on this one. I'm here for any questions.
Any questions? No. Mr. Mechanic.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, happy birthday and good afternoon, council members. I'm here to simply to answer any questions and to ask for your approval.
Any questions for Mr. Mechanic? Yes, ma'am.
We should have let him go first. I mean, wasn't he our 2:30 in the morning one? He should have gotten special.
I heard he likes hanging out with us.
Oh, okay,
Virtual
well.
and in person. That's what I heard.
It's the latest I've ever attended a hearing.
Me too.
Not me.
Yep. Anybody in the public wish to speak on item number 114?
Motion closed.
We have motion closed from
Second.
Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Hurtak. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Councilmember Henderson, would you mind reading item 114?
Yes, I will be happy to do so. File number REZ 23-44, ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption. Oh, I gotta turn this microphone on. I gotta get used to doing that, sorry. Ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption, and ordinance rezoning. I'm 114, right?
Yes.
Rezoning property in the general vicinity of 305 South Boulevard in the city of Tampa, Florida, and more particularly described in section 1 from zoning district classification PD to PD plan development, business, professional, and medical office, providing an effective date.
Second.
Motion from Councilwoman Henderson, second from Councilmember Miranda. Please record your vote.
Motion carried unanimously with Viera being absent.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
sir. All right, item number 115. Yes, sir, Mr. Hussein.
Case REZ 23-46. This is being presented for second reading and adoption at the location 7702 South O'Brien Street. This is a proposed rezoning from IG Industrial General to RS50 Residential Single Family. This being Euclidean, no site plan was required. I'm here for any questions.
Any questions? All right, anybody in the public, I'm sorry, do we have an applicant for item number 115? Okay, anybody in the public wish to speak on item number 115?
Motion closed.
Motion closed from Councilmember Clendenin. Yes, ma'am? Oh, we do. We have the applicant online on this one, Diana Aponte. Was she sworn in? Uh-oh.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am. Please turn your camera on and raise your right hand. We're going to swear you in.
Trying to turn it on right now. Don't know why it's not letting me. For some reason, the camera button is like loading and it's not letting me like press
Okay.
on.
Do you have anything to add to this or?
No, just here for questions and
Okay.
any concerns. We just respectfully request your approval today.
Thank you very much. Can I get a motion to, oh, there you are, there you are.
Motion
Okay.
closed.
All right, a motion to close from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Miranda, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? All right, Councilmember Clendenin, if you mind reading it?
115. I
Yes.
move file number REZ 2346, an ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption, an ordinance rezoning property in the general vicinity of 7702 South O'Brien Street in the city of Tampa, Florida, and more particularly described in section 1 from the zoning district classifications IG Industrial General to RS50 Residential Single Family, provided an effective date.
We have a motion from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Miranda. Please record your vote.
Motion carried unanimously with Viera being absent.
All right, thank you. Next up is item 116.
Good afternoon, Council. Kate Wells with the Legal Department. Item 116 is an ordinance correcting ordinance number 2022-105, which rezoned the property located at 2303 North Ola Avenue and 211 West Park Avenue. It's correcting a Scrivener's error in the site plan. The correct site plan is attached to the proposed ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions at this time? No. Do we have, oh, it's just a Scrivener's error, so we're not going to have an applicant. Do we have any public comment on this? All right, we have a motion to close from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Councilmember Hurtak.
File number REZ 22-27, ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption, an ordinance amending ordinance number 2022-105, which rezoned the property in the general vicinity of 2303 North Ola Avenue and 211 West Park Avenue in the city of Tampa, Florida, in order to correct a Scrivener's error in the site plan attached as Exhibit B to said ordinance and replacing same with the attached and corrected Exhibit B, providing an effective date.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Councilwoman Hurtak, second from Councilmember Miranda. Please record your vote.
Motion carried unanimously with Viera being absent.
Thank you very much. Next up is item number 117. Yes, sir.
Case REZ 23-18. This is being presented for second reading and adoption at the locations 2500 2510 North Tampa Street, 106, 108, 110, and 114 West Columbus Drive, and 101 and 103 West Amelia Avenue. Proposed rezoning from RM24 Residential Multifamily and CG Commercial General to PD Planned Development Storefront Residential and Commercial General Uses. Site plans have been turned in the City Clerk's office. I'm here for any questions.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Hussein? I see or hear none. Do we have anybody an applicant for item number 117? All right, Alex Shaler. Have you been sworn in, ma'am? No. Please raise your right hand and unmute yourself. We'll swear you in.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to provide is the truth and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Are you muted, ma'am? We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Great. So we had a second first reading on this back on June 15th to update the revision sheet to include some specific natural resources comments for the landscape plan. So we've worked with Aaron Mayer in the Natural Resources Department. That landscape plan was submitted also with the final site plans. And I'm available to answer any questions, but we respectfully request your approval again today. Thanks.
Any questions at this time? I see none. Do we have anybody in the public that wishes to speak on item number 117? And no one is motion to close from Councilmember Moreno, second from Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Councilmember Carlson.
Yes, I'd like to move item number 117, file number REZ 23-18, ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption, and ordinance rezoning property in general vicinity of 2500 and 2510 North Tampa Street, 106, 108, 110, and 114 West Columbus Drive, and 101 and 103 West Amelia Avenue in the city of Tampa, Florida, more particularly described in section 1 from zoning district classification RM24 residential multifamily and CG commercial general to PD plan development storefront residential and commercial general uses, providing an effective date.
We have a motion from Councilmember Carlson, second from Councilmember Miranda. Please record your vote.
Motion carried unanimously with Viera being absent.
Move the resolution.
And we have motion moved resolution from Councilmember Carlson, second from Councilmember Henderson. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, next up is item number 118. And, okay, yes, sir. Go ahead.
Not for myself.
Oh, it's not for you? Okay. This is for a vacating.
Vacate.
Do we have?
Ross Salmons.
Ross Salmons.
Ross Salmons? Yes, sir, go ahead.
Yes. Ross Salmons Development Coordination, presenting file number VAC 23-13. This ordinance is being presented for second reading and adoption. This is a proposed vacating request to vacate the airspace over that portion of Tyler Street at right-of-way, located north of Cass Street, south of Fortune Street, east of the Hillsborough River, and west of W.C. McKinnis Place within the plat of air in the Arts District subdivision. I'm available if you have any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Salmons? Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
So I just want to clarify, because I don't have a problem with vacating, but I think during the first reading of this, we talked about the length of that vacating, so that there was no way to restrict, like, so this vacating is in perpetuity. Is that correct? And there's no way of like having an effective date of like the duration of that building, or is it, because so when we vacate this airspace, the air rights, that's going to be forever, and if this building's torn down, another building can still have the air rights, is that right?
Correct.
So that would be my only concern, and I think I'll probably, and there's no other way of restricting this to just the duration of the lifespan of that building, or there's no other way of restricting this?
I will let Mr. Ron Wickton speak on that.
Good afternoon, City Council. Ron Wigington, Legal Department. No, as we discussed last time and during the first reading, the only possible mechanism by which we can revert the interest back to the city would be by reverter. And unfortunately, by Florida statute, that is restricted to only 21 years. So 21 years from now, that reverter would be completely wiped out and wouldn't be effective anyway.
Any other questions? All right, for 118, we have Ms. Shaler. as a representative. Anything, ma'am?
Nothing further to add. Happy to answer any other questions that you might have, but I think Ron probably cleared those up. Thanks.
Any other questions? If not, do we have any public comment for item number 118?
Move to close.
We have a motion closed from Councilmember Miranda, second from Councilmember Henderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Councilmember Miranda, I believe it's you.
Thank you, Chairman. File number 118, file number VAC 23/13. Ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption. An ordinance in the city of Tampa, Florida, vacating, closing, discontinuing, and abandoning the airspace, that portion of Tyler Street right-of-way located north of Cass Street, south of Fortune Street, east of the Hillsborough River, and west of W.C. McKenna's Place, within the plat of AER and the Arts District subdivision in the city of Tampa, Florida, Hillsborough County, Florida, as more fully described of Section 2 thereof, subject to certain covenants, conditions, and restrictions, as more particularly set forth herein, providing for enforcement and penalties for violation, providing for definition, interpretation, and repealing conflict, providing for severability, providing an effective date.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Henderson. Yes, ma'am. And yes, sir.
Comment.
Councilman Carlson.
Yeah, just, I may have said this last time, but, the public was very concerned when this project was originally approved that because of the way the RFP was handled. It's not this developer that owns it now, but the public was concerned about how the land was taken away from the Straz Center by the last mayor, how it was how the RFP was let, how the roads were changed, the $6.5+ million in subsidies that the city has put in, the appropriateness of the building in that location. But none of that is what we're voting on today. I just want to make it clear to anybody who's paying attention. I probably would have voted against. Definitely would have voted against the project initially, the way the deal was done. But today we are where we are, and this developer has got, it's just like 3 or 4 developers down, and the administration approved it. It's not here anymore. So this is the reality of the lawyers trying to fix a problem to make sure that what has already been approved by the city previously does not break the law going forward. And so I voted for it last time, and I'll vote again just with that. But just as a reminder, it's not voting in favor of and supporting the underlying project. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, just for the record, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to vote for it again as well this time. But just showing that I'm just the reluctance because of the perpetuity. And I'm voting for it only because through my discussions with staff prior to the first reading, that the width of the sidewalks and it would be negligible impact on the public. But yeah, I would definitely have liked to have seen a sunset on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. If we could record our votes.
Motion carried with Hurtak voting no and VR being absent.
All right. Item number 119. Yes, sir. Mr. Hussein.
Agenda item number 119, case AB 223-15. This is being presented for second reading and adoption. This is for a special use 2, SCU2 for alcoholic beverage sales, small venue, consumption on premises only. This is for beer, wine, and liquor at the location 2907 West Bay to Bay Boulevard. Site plans have been turned into the city clerk's office. I'm here for any questions if needed.
Any questions for the gentleman? Nope. Do we have an applicant for item number 119? I see Ms. Shaler's online. Yes, ma'am?
This is my last one. Alex Shaler, 400 North Ashley Drive. Happy to answer any questions. As Saying mentioned, we made the updates to the site plan and turned this into the city. So we respectfully request your approval again today.
Any questions for Ms. Shaler? Nope. Do we have anybody in the public that wishes to speak on item number 119? Motion to close from Councilman Clendenin, second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Councilmember Henderson, 119.
Yes, I move file number AD 2-23-15, ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption. An ordinance approving a special use permit S2 for alcoholic beverage sales, small venue, consumption on premises only, and making lawful the sale of beverages regardless of alcoholic content, beer, wine, and liquor on that certain lot, plot, or tract of land located at 2907 West Bay to Bay Boulevard, Tampa, Florida, as more particularly described in Section 2, providing that all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict are repealed, providing an effective date.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Henderson, second from Councilmember Miranda. Please record your vote.
Motion carried unanimously with Vera being absent.
Thank you very much. We go into our 10:30 public hearing. Item number 120, Benny Calzone.
Good afternoon, Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the legal department. Item number 120 is a review hearing for a petition for review that was filed for SU 123-42 for the property located at 1902 East Shadow Lawn Avenue. The petitioner is Mr. Benny Calzone. He is the authorized agent for the property owner, Adam Napoli. The petitioner filed an application requesting from the zoning department an application for an extended family residence. The zoning department denied the request on May 15th, 2023, on the basis that the application did not meet the specific requirements in Code Section 27-132, subsection C, regarding the extended family residence. City Council should have been, I provided earlier copies of the code sections, the relevant code sections, which is 27-132, regulations governing individual special uses, Code Section 27-129, which are the general standards, Code Sections 27-130, which are the conditions and safeguards, and finally Code Section 27-61, which are the standards for the review hearing. I also provided sample motions and the rules of procedure for this matter. The standard of review, as stated in Code Section 27-61, subsection J3, is a de novo, I'm sorry?
Did you provide us the rules? We didn't get.
I gave them to Mr. Shelby.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. The standard of review is the de novo standard of review, which means that it shall not be limited, your review shall not be limited in its review to that information, documentation, or evidence upon which the special use permit was based. City Council may receive new evidence. Staff is present to give an overview of the application and the decision. After City Council hears all the evidence in this matter, City Council can affirm the decision of the zoning administrator and deny the request to waive the specific requirement for the extended family residence in Code Section 27-132, subsection C. Or City Council can overturn the decision of the zoning administrator and therefore waive the requirement for the specific requirement for extended family residence in Code Section 27-132, subsection C. And I will turn it over to Mr. Cotton to go provide more detail about the application.
Mr. Cotton.
Good afternoon, Council. Eric Cotton, Development Coordination. We submitted a presentation, but since I have this paper, I guess we can put it up that way. Again, as Ms. Pettis-Mackel indicated, this is a petition for review for SU 23-42. The petitioner is Benny Calzone, representing Adam Napoli for property at 1902 East Shadowlawn Avenue. Property zone residential single family RS 60. The special use is for an extended family residence, and the applicant, the resident who's going to be living there is the property owner's mother. You can see us at the southeast corner of Frierson and 19th. You see from the site plan, the garage is located in the northeast corner of the property. I put the paper up, but they want to switch back to that real quick.
All right. Yeah, we have an issue seeing the PowerPoint. It went lime green. Key West green.
Is it up? Oh, okay. See from the site plan, the property is the garage is at the northeast corner of Frierson and 19th.
Yeah, we need it up on our screens. We only see the overhead up. There we go.
Okay. Northeast corner of the property. The request was denied by staff. Because one of the requirements, it has to be placed in a conforming building. This building is non-conforming. It was, does not meet the underlying zoning district. It requires setbacks under 27-290. So the result was a denial by staff. Does council have any questions?
Any questions at this time? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So the accessory unit is in the, what's the garage? Is that what?
Yes, ma'am. It's an existing non-conforming structure.
Okay.
They're going to convert that from a garage into living space for his mother.
Okay, and is part of that because it's got 3 frontages?
Correct. So it's a double fronting lot. So the setbacks need to be double fronting. The house, I believe, is oriented towards shadow lawn itself, but this does not meet the requirements of the setback, so therefore staff has to deny the request.
Okay,
The only way to
yeah.
get that approval is to go before city council.
I just wanted to double check. Thank you so much.
And before Mr. Miranda can ask the question, yes, he does know he has to go through the annual inspections.
Yeah, well, I'm not worried about him, I'm worried about us doing it. He's gonna get what he needs if we vote yes. So
Yes,
he's
sir.
gotta be less than 600 square feet, which is about 25 by 23 and a half, something like that.
Mhm.
And the structure has to be conforming, here's where we come with a variance. And then the occupant must be family residents or family related by marriage, by blood, by adoption, or legal guardianship. Have you verified all that?
Yes, sir, the applicant submitted documentation
And
that
how
it's
do you
his
do
mother.
that? Just by, yes, I do?
No, it's a notarized document. They have to provide, I believe there's, in the application itself, there's a birth certificate from the applicant showing the relationship between mom and
And
son.
may not pay rent.
Correct. It cannot be separately metered for utilities.
Can't collect from a family member.
I know.
So a question
Yes, sir.
is, so this is an existing structure just converting to a residential structure, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and what is the zoning of the property next door?
This right here
Yeah.
is RS60, it's the same zoning, it's single
So,
family.
and what's existing on that lot?
It's a single family home.
Okay.
The aerial sort of,
Chairman.
you can't really tell
Is
that
this the
well.
one that needs 3 feet and you got 2.9 inches?
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's all it is?
Yes, sir.
3 to 2.9?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, never mind. Good night, good night.
We really need to look at this. It's, you know.
They have to do what they have to do.
We did actually, back in June of 2022, we did come before council and make that recommendation to allow for non-conforming structures to be used without having to go back to city council on an appeal. If you want, we could revisit that in the January cycle. It's up to the pleasure of council on that one, but
Anybody else?
any additional questions?
Any other questions? No? All right, we now go to the applicant. Yes, sir?
Good afternoon, Council. Benny Calzone, representing Mr. and Mrs. Napoli. He is moving his mother into this as she gets elder in age, and we are less than 1 inch that we're asking for. It's basically just a formality. They are, the survey equipment now is a lot better than it was back in 1920s when this was built, so that's all I can say. But it is his mother that's moving into it, and it's under 1 inch. So we would appreciate your approval on this.
All right. You have 15 minutes to present. You don't want to keep
That's
going?
okay.
Chairman.
Yes, sir.
1 inch seems like a little thing, but if you compare it for a moonshot, you end up in Jupiter.
Yes, sir.
I thought you were going a totally different route.
I'm not asking a question. Do we have anybody in the public that wishes to speak on this item? All right, any additional any additional comment by staff? No?
No, sir.
Any rebuttal, sir? No?
Move to close.
Motion closed from Councilmember Miranda, second from Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Who would like to take a stab at this? Make a motion. Yes, sir.
I move file number, oh, we have a substitute there.
Yeah, you have to read it from the.
Oh, here we go. Never
The
mind,
last
never
sample.
mind, never mind, never mind. Here we go. Okay, great, yes, okay, there we go. My goodness. Okay. I move to overturn the zoning administrator's denial of special use 1 application, SU 23-42, for the property located at 1902 East Shadow Lawn Avenue because the petitioner provided competent substantial evidence to waive the requirement of City Code Section 23-132C for extended family residence to be located in a non-conforming accessory structure or structure made conforming as a result of a variance for the following reasons. I found that the evidence suggested that it was a minor change to the zoning requirements, that existing zoning and existing structure that was created as presented by the applicant could very well have been created because of equipment that was, and I have a wall that's in that same condition of my own. So, yes, so.
We have a motion from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Miranda. All in, can we just do a voice vote?
I mean, we can, but.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Okay, you're all set. With Councilmember Vieira being absent at vote. All right, that concludes the agenda. No, wait, well, we have two items that were pulled, so let's go to these pulled items as we go into staff reports. Those two items were 94 and 19. Item number 94 was a request by Councilmember Carlson. Yes, sir, if you want to kick it off or you want to wait.
Yeah, this, and I gave Vic a little heads up on this morning, but this is, when I was an activist before I was in council in 2018, there were a lot of questions in the community about how this, and this precedes Vic, but there were a lot of questions in the community about how this contract was let by the Buckhorn administration. There was an RFP, and then there was another RFP, and then there was a challenge. And I think part of the reason that he's proposing extending this is because of the challenges that are out there. This contract is, my vote has nothing to do with the underlying idea of the devices, but it's just, I don't want my name associated with any contract that had questions labeled to it in 2018. And I think there's too much connected to that. Second is that the idea was that it would be a temporary thing, and the Buckhorn administration, as I recall, extended it, which there were questions at the time about whether they had the power to do that with city council. They should have taken it out for a new RFP after the test phase, but that was before we came on in 2019, and now we're in 2024 still using the same contract. I don't think that a temporary test contract should still be used 6 years later, especially one that was questioned in the beginning. So I'm just going to vote no. That's the reason why I want to pull.
Councilmember Clendenin.
Yeah, since I've got Vic in front of me, and we had public comment this morning that raised a question that I have, and that is, as we're renewing these contracts and these scooters, because I mean, I live in the urban area, and I'm subjected to scooters laying across my driveway and laying across the sidewalks, and I pick them up off the street routinely. Why isn't there a technology, or why are we not requiring these devices to be corralled or some way so that we're not digging them out of the river? These when they're returned by the persons who are renting them for that period of time, that the company is withholding money until they're put back in a specific spot. Is that just not technologically feasible, or why isn't that being done?
Thank you, Councilman. Afternoon, Chair. Happy birthday. Afternoon, Council. Vic Bide, Director of Mobility Department. So Councilman Carlson was absolutely right. This is the pilot program and another extension that we're bringing in front of you, which was originally initiated in 2019. The ordinance was 2018 to facilitate this. And the reason we're extending this, again, as Councilman Carlson mentioned, was there is an ongoing legal action to an RFP, a competitive procurement that we had initiated, that to the person that made the public comment this morning did include new rules that we wanted. It had more rules. It has stricter fines for not parking appropriately. It has better controls by requesting additional data than the providers are asked for right now under the pilot. It also provides for a dock program in the urban core meaning you have to park in docks, which the current pilot does not facilitate or allow for. And it includes parking violation fines, but also, so not just a disincentive with a fine, but an incentive with a bounty program. So members that do subscribe to the service, if they do the right thing and park a scooter that wasn't parked correctly in the right place, would get a credit. So we had thought through that program and that procurement in concert with 6 different providers at the time. 2 of them don't even exist anymore. And that's how we procured stand-up scooters, the sit-down scooter program that is currently active, and the e-bike program. The stand-up scooters, however, were challenged. That is with the Hillsborough County Court right now, or the courthouse right now with Judge Nash. And they have all the documentation. However, the party that challenged it has requested a verbal hearing. That is scheduled in September. We do expect a favorable outcome. Of course, there's no guarantee of that. But in September, we will be able to, depending on what happens then, move forward to the next step. So this is an interim 6-month extension of this pilot program. And it also harmonizes, these agreements harmonize the overall program as well. So this is really to harmonize, extend temporarily, but we have a well thought out, well put together program already in the works. We're just waiting for that matter to be resolved in the courts.
Thank you very much. That's very informative, and I appreciate that, and I'm sure people who are listening would like to hear that as well. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I just remember some of these things. I remember that they had 24 hours or by the next morning to pick up the scooters or wherever, something to that effect. If not, there was a fine of, I forget, $25 or $50 per scooter or something. And I'm not saying I'm correct, but I remember there was some to that. And sometimes they go past that period of time. Have we collected any fees at all from any scooters that have been violated for that stance?
Thank you for bringing that up, Councilman. That's a good question. To date, in permits and fines, we have collected over $2.4 million in revenue from the scooter companies. We've put this revenue to good use. It generally goes into an LOGT, local option gas tax account. But these scooter revenues currently fund the ferry partially. These scooter revenues partially funded our Vision Zero action plan. The scooter revenues, recently, we've been working with Keep Campo Bay Beautiful because they fish 10 to 20 scooters out every quarter when they go out there for cleanups. So we're making the scooter companies pay for it through these fees. And should those fees not be sufficient, we do have the controls to raise them. What we don't have are the rules which are in the new program. And those rules are still relevant to this day. So should this matter be resolved in September, we feel good about moving forward with a much better program.
Well, thank you. If I may, just one other thing, and in my opinion anyway, I see of all ages writing these things, from teenagers, college graduates, and to a little more than teenagers with about 60 years added to them. And they're all over the place. And do I like it? Maybe not so much, but it's an ambience that people, not over in the city of Tampa, in any city you go to now, these things are there. Not to say that I'm going to play copycat, but as long as they're controlled to some degree, I have no problem with that.
Thank you, Councilman. And on that note, we do measure the trip length, which is really important. So long as in a place like Tampa, where we have limited mobility options, the trip length is over 1 mile, that would typically be a car trip or could be considered a car trip. Our average trip lengths are 1.2 miles for stand-up scooters and even longer for e-bikes. So that is a critical measure that we look at. As far as use, it's hard to decipher because the scooter companies do not share origins or destinations or customer information for competitive reasons.
Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Clendenin, would you like to move this item? It's in your committee? Or committee, yeah.
Yeah, I move file number 23-82509.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Councilmember Carlson with the no.
Motion carried with Carson voting no and VR being absent.
All right, and Councilman Clendenin, you asked for item number 19 to be pulled. Then we will go into,
Artwork. We're discussing the arts.
yes.
It's the mural.
Yes, sir.
Relative to item, Councilmember Morris Massey, Legal Department, relative to item number 19, Mr. Brody's here if you have specific questions about the agreement, but I did want you all to know that this agreement is being done, the art is being done pursuant to your code. Your code requires that for every public works project that's a municipal public works project, there be an art component. So I just wanted to make sure you understood that was the basis for this agreement. That wasn't abundantly clear in the backup.
So Mr. Morris, question about that before we get into this.
Yeah.
Is it required to be installed at the location of the project?
Yes.
And do we?
There is, I think typically it is. I mean, there is a provision in there saying that the money could be collected and used maybe in a different location. I have to go back and look at the ordinance, but typically it is part of the city's effort to make art available wherever we're building facilities throughout the community.
Yeah, I understand that, and typically that seems to work, but sometimes sometimes it maybe not work quite as well. So now we have to inject some common sense into government, I think. So as I look at this, okay, so I guess we can talk about this now. What was that? So I want to say, so it's $150,000, which it's we were talking about millions of dollars, but it maybe doesn't seem so much, but it's still $150,000. To a facility which is a very important facility for the city of Tampa, but not necessarily a place that is enjoyed or observed by many members of the public. It honestly, at first it didn't ring a lot of alarms for me until I started thinking about it, that why, again, injecting common sense, and maybe it's because I'm new and a little bit of spit and vinegar in here, but I hate to just be that get along government guy that says, it's just $150,000. But if there's an opportunity that we could take $150,000, put it into an art fund, and spend it in a place that would be more open to the public and more appreciated by the public, I think we should pursue that.
If that's where the council as a whole wants to move in that direction, then I think what I would recommend you do is defer this item and let us look at the code, because doing that sort of thing may require some changes to your public art code, basically.
Councilmember Henderson, then Councilmember Miranda, then Councilmember Hurtak and Carlson. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Massey, Attorney Massey, I noticed that the per diem was like $10,000 for the travel and living expenses for the artist.
Ms. Nye is coming here. This agreement was negotiated, and Mr. Brody and Ms. Nye would have the details about that sort of, those details in the agreement. I just wanted council to understand the basis for why this, I think part of the question, one of the reasons it was pulled, was there was a comment about why we were spending this money on a solid waste project. And so I just wanted you all to understand the basis why that is being done, and it's as a result of your code requirements for municipal projects. So that's really. Robin, Carl, they have a bunch of questions, I think.
Hi, Robin Nye, Arts and Cultural Affairs.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, the details, the very specific details of the art project, I am curious about it. The artist is going to be paid $115,000. We're spending $10,000 for the living and travel expenses, $5,000 for paint. I just want to know, how did those figures come about? Was it an RFP? How did we get to this number?
Yes, ma'am. It wasn't, we did it's by ordinance, as you know. The solid waste reached out to us. They would like to do the project. We met with them, and we did an open call to artists, an RFQ. That went national. Two finalists were local. They selected the third artist, the committee did. The artwork, one of the reasons also that the budget is so high is that the artist is priming the site himself. And the thing with that is that it does, it will last a lot longer. For instance, when it's primed properly, the Poe Garage is a good example of that, where it was primed really well, and that was quite a few years ago anyway, where if it was not used with that primer, it would fade by, within 5 years.
Councilmember Miranda, then Hurtak, then Carlson.
And I understand that, and I'm all for art, believe me. However, Mr. Rafael Blanco may be the next Picasso or whatever, but how many people are going to see it in that location?
You see it when you go to the dump.
Will you go where?
To the dump.
Robin, I can answer that question as well.
Thank you. Sorry.
Good afternoon, Council. Larry Washington, Director of Solid Waste Environmental Program Management Department, and roughly 1,000 people frequent this area per week.
But are those residents or are those are Tampa residents, am I correct?
The majority
take a tour.
are
You've got tourists and see, I'm gonna take you to the Solid Waste Department and show you some art. It doesn't work that way, I don't believe. But what I'm getting at, you should be, if art's gonna be real art, it should be where everybody can see it, not just city employees.
It's not. It's, the public can see it when they go to, as Mr. Washington just mentioned, to the location. It's a large mural that covers the whole facade that would, when you walk it, it's a very powerful kind of thing where
You still gotta go in, you gotta go in that.
Yes, sir.
You gotta go a quarter of a mile before you get where you're at.
Yes, sir.
So you're gonna see a quarter. Okay.
Well, I can speak towards that as well. So to be honest, sir, you can see it from the crosstown, like Robin mentioned. And so we have 1,000 customers that frequent this location weekly on a weekly basis. In addition to, of course, in our city personnel, which we have 300 teammates with our team, in addition to fire and all the training that goes on that peninsula as well. So it's not just the solid waste team. It's fire, it's CFR, it's TPD individuals. And once we relocate, I know that's a topic of conversation that's coming up soon, you'll have more reason why that this era will truly stand out. We want it to be impactful. We want it to be very intentional as well, since this canvas is going to be huge. The facility it accommodates 30,000 square feet of waste within a day. So it's going to be a huge canvas. You can see it from miles away. You don't have to drive into the facility to see it. You can see it.
Councilmember Hurtak.
I don't know that the other council members have seen it, but Miss Nguyen, Osea Nguyen, has sent me an email image of it, and I think it's very powerful. You don't happen to have that, do you?
Yes, ma'am, I did bring it. And I will say, one of the reasons we don't often show it is that there are minor design changes that go along the way.
Yes.
And we just want to be able to manage expectations, but we could never give a contract without giving a good sense about what it's going to be and happen like that.
So I wanted to say that, yes, I think the image is really powerful because it's basically our workers.
Yes.
And I have to say, I do like that. I also, while it is a lot of money, we're spending a lot of money on the waste energy facility, a lot of money. And that's coming in front of us soon. And one of the things that I know the state has done, that I don't know if it's national, but locally, we put a percentage of public work dollars into art. And so this bottom image, is that where you can see it from the crosstown?
That's way too high.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
So I know that someone might ask for a continuance on this, and I would just ask, when you do that, if you could ask for some imagery so that council can get an idea of where it will go, because I feel very strongly that it will be very iconic, and I do know that it's a lot of money, but I'm very hesitant to start down the road of not encouraging public art in public spaces. I just don't want to go down that road, and so that's just my thoughts. I don't want to stop including art in all places, and just because it's the waste to energy facility, I don't believe that it can't be beautiful.
Councilman Carlson.
And I think everybody knows I'm a huge supporter of the arts, and I think we need art to make our community better. And employees and people delivering trash need to be inspired by it as well. And this looks like it's very motivational for staff, which is important because we're trying to attract and retain the best people. I have the same concern that some of my colleagues have. This department is upside down right now in terms of money, and the only way to fix that will be with a rate increase. By our own ordinance, it sounds like we're required to do this. So what I would suggest is that we try to address this issue in the future. I feel badly that there's an RFP and an artist who's committed to it. This is a lot of money for an artist. I agree with my colleagues that ideally, especially at this cost of art, it should be in a place that's more prominent for the public. I'm not in favor of changing the ordinance, but I would, instead of a continuance, I would suggest that we have Morris come back with an interpretation of the ordinance, just to come back and say, can we apply it, not just put the money in a fund, but could we have applied it to another building from the same department, or could we have applied it to the trucks that are going in and out of it or something like that? It would be great to have an interpretation of how we could have used it. But since the law is the way it is, and this has gone far down the road, I would kind of reluctantly vote for it today, but then say that we should address these issues in the future. It's a lot of money also. Thank you.
I've taken a real quick look at the code provision, so and I don't want to offer, and Mr. Brody's, this is his area that he deals with more on a day-to-day basis, but the way I read the code is it's a mandatory part of any of our public works projects for municipal facilities. If there is money left over, the way I read the ordinance, then it can be applied to other public work, city public work arts projects elsewhere. I think that's the way the ordinance is set up to operate. If council wanted to change that, we could look at changing that or clarifying that, but that would probably take some action by you all to do that later on in the process. I don't think we could do that relative to this project right now, but that would be my.
And Massey, can I jump in for a quick second as well? I do want to make sure that the council is aware that this transfer station, the new transfer station, was a solid waste cash funded project. The 30-some-odd million was funded by the solid waste project, or the solid waste department, excuse me. So there were no bonds required for, any of these, well, at least specifically with that project. So this was solely cash funded by the solid waste department.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, can you put the artwork back up again? Is that is there any girl power on that picture?
Yes, ma'am, there is.
She is a female, the one behind?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And the picture is not final, by the way.
It's not what?
It's not final.
It's not final.
So that was the initial rendering. So we plan on going back to the drawing board to make some minor tweaks to it.
The people are the same. It's the background where he's working. The artist is making some changes.
Councilman Miranda, then Councilman.
Let me just say this so I can clear myself. I have never voted against an artwork in the city of Tampa on my years of public service. However, when the location is where it's at, and you're talking about all the people are going to see it when they're across town, they're going to see it when they're coming to work and leaving, the two most dangerous times to have an accident. That's when the public is most stressed out. I'm late to work. I got to get home because my son or my daughter, soccer, baseball, whatever it is, or whatever. But it just, I would rather spend $150,000 in getting all the trucks, clean them real up and wrap them up with this thing on so that everybody see it. So the trucks don't look like they look. And my good brothers and sisters in ATU, they're wonderful people what they do, and I want to help them. But I don't think this is going to help them where it's at. And that location, the only ones that are going to see it are the ones that work for the city, unless you want to go and take a tour and say, I'm going to show you the best art we have, and we have solid waste. And that doesn't happen. So I want to make sure that I'm understood that I love art. In fact, I got maybe 60 or 70 pieces of pretty good art stored away. And I just believe in art. I believe it works on your mind. I believe it makes you relax. I got about 10 pieces at the house that I look at, and they still look good. Maybe one day I can't see too well, but I remember them in my mind. But what I'm saying is, I love all my brothers and sisters there, but I think the location of this, only ones that are gonna see it is not the general public and not the ones that come to vacation or to land in Tampa. If you wanna promote the good people in ATU, you must have a location where everyone can see it that comes in.
Yeah, I've had discussions. I'm a huge proponent of the art, and I'm kind of with Councilman Carlson and what Councilman Miranda just said. Unapologetic supporter of the arts. I think that a growing, thriving community requires art, and so I'm just here to say, I'm going to be on board with art all the time, but then again, you have to inject common sense into some of this stuff, and when we're talking $150,000, I'd have a hard time justifying to my neighbors or anybody else that pays taxes in the city of Tampa or pays garbage fees that we would, not that we would spend $150,000 on art, because that's justifiable, but it's the common sense of where we put it and the public display of it. I would like to make a motion to continue file number PRC 2382312 to provide to have staff provide further information on our ability to either not to take away these funds, but possibly redirect these funds to some of the ideas that we heard here today, to maybe a more public, prominent position, or into an area that we can use this funds for other public display of art, and to be determined by staff or with the input of staff. But I would like to continue this motion today. Somebody grab me a date. Anybody got it?
That's a great day. July 27th.
July 27th.
Second.
We have a motion for a continuance from Councilmember Clendenin, second Councilmember Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
2 nays.
Thank you.
2 nays. We have the nays.
You want to take a roll call?
Nay.
You good?
See what I
Let's
tell
do a roll call vote.
Sierra is absent. Miranda?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
Hurtak?
No.
Clendenin?
Yes.
Henderson?
No.
Maniscalco?
Yes.
Motion carried with Hurtak and Henderson voting no and VR being absent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, we go to staff reports. No administration update, is that correct? All right. So we go to item number 123, $15.3 million. Who do we have here to talk about this large amount? Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, council. Happy birthday, councilman.
Thank you.
Sorry, I have an echo. Let me turn it off. Adri Colina, Director, Logistics and Asset Management. It actually is not 15 million. What we are bringing before you this afternoon, you might recall on June 1st, we came before you with a financial resolution increasing the city's fuel budget. And you approved that for $4.75 million. What we are asking for today is really a housekeeping item to adjust the contract that we have with our vendor, Rogers Petroleum, to allow for the expenditure of those funds.
Okay.
So we're not asking for any more money. What we're asking for is just to correct the contract to allow
okay.
us to pay our vendor.
Any questions? Councilmember Carlson, yes, sir.
Since the amount is going up by such a large amount, why wouldn't it go out to RFP again?
Because we are under contract. We entered into this contract in 2020. It was a 2-year contract with an allowable 2-year renewal, which we did in 2022. With the rising cost of fuel and the rising use or increased use of fuel, we're just amending the contract to pay that.
But the
we will
original
go
amount-
back out for bid when this 2-year contract expires next year.
But the original amount, the original contract had a cap, a dollar cap, and you're asking to increase the dollar cap, right?
That is correct.
And was this under contract administration or purchasing?
This is under purchasing.
Yeah, I'm gonna come back later to council with some ideas. I've got a meeting with Chief of Staff tomorrow morning to talk about mainly contract administration. But this is the kind of thing that, you know, we just spent a lot of time talking about $150,000, and we use Hannah Avenue or the East Community Park, or this, when we're talking about millions of dollars, I think they should be put out for RFP. I don't think we should have these large dollar amounts. So I'm just going to vote.
And this was, but let me also tell you a couple of things, Councilman, and I understand what you're saying. So everyone knows the increasing price of fuel. I mean, that we all know. What we have seen is 116% increase. In fact, when this vendor submitted their bid in 2020, we were paying, or they said it would be $1.77 a gallon for unleaded and $2.08 for diesel. We all know we can't find that anymore. In addition to that increase, we've had an increased use of fuel. So we entered into this contract March of 2020. We all know what happened March in 2020. And then we have increased boaters on our waterways. Some of this fuel is used at the Marjorie Park Basin. By our Parks and Rec department, they sell fuel for boaters. We have an increased use there. We also have an increased use in generators. Over at wastewater, we have construction projects underway, and generators need to be filled and available in case they're needed to keep the boilers going. So it's a couple of things. Rising cost of fuel and increasing use.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Mr. Spearman, since he jumped on about this, but my philosophy is on Hannah Avenue. Also, the argument was, well, the price of contracting is going up, and so if we had to put it out for RFP, the price would have gone up. My philosophy is we need to have open RFPs. But I'd like to ask Mr. Spearman, why did this original contract have the possibility to increase it in the contract as subject to city council approval, or are we just increasing the dollar cap on it? And why wouldn't it go back out for RFP?
So let me answer. Good afternoon, Greg Spearman, Purchasing Director. So let me answer Councilman Carlson your question this way. Yes, we do have the ability in the contract to increase the dollar amount, but the other thing is that this particular contract, fuel, is based on something called OPIS pricing. This is the Oil Price Information Services. And OPIS pricing is prices set based upon regions of the country. So the price we pay is for the Southeast region. The bulk of the price of this cost of this contract is based on OPIS pricing. Now, it's not pump pricing, it's less than pump pricing. There's a small amount that is relevant to the delivery fee. For an example, you heard Ms. Kalina talk about the increase in gasoline. Just on the unleaded portion of gas, the delivery fee, which is fixed, by the way, is 0.055 cents per gallon. That's all that is. But again, even if we were to put this contract out to bid, we would be getting OPIS pricing, and there would not be really any substantial savings at all, because OPIS sets the pricing on a daily rack price at the port of
So
Tampa.
you're getting to you're getting to part of my point. Part of it is we need to get the best price. The other thing is why can't we open contracts up to other companies? If we would get the same price, why can't another company provide this other part?
Well, we did that with the initial contract. We did get competition. Now, there were 4 or 5 companies that competed on this. Again, the bulk of this pricing, 95% of it, is based on the OPIS pricing that's already set in terms of what we pay for fuel. A small, tiny portion of it.
But you see what I'm saying? Like if we bought, I don't remember the numbers, but if we bought $10 million from one company and then we need another $10 million, why wouldn't we give the $10 million to another company? Why would we just increase the contract to $1 to $20 million?
Well, it's based on how much fuel we actually need for the city. And the way we set this contract up, we have 2 different groupings. We have Group A, which is tank wagon, which would be less than 4,000 gallons. And then we have Group B, which would be transport, which is 7,500 gallons. So we don't have large volumes in terms of how we bid this out, but we do increase our usage on this contract based upon what Ms. Kalina said. So rebidding this probably would not have had any significant savings at all because.
Yeah, that's my point is that
cost
it-
is the
I'm
fuel
not,
itself.
cost is, for me, cost is one factor. The other is just having more companies participate. And,
Okay,
that's
let
my
me see if I
concern
can
really
explain
about the East Coast
Right.
Park,
Right.
East Tampa Park and
Right.
also Hannah Avenue is that these contractors, in those cases, the contractors come in and I presume they're making a percentage and the number goes way up. And I don't understand why we didn't, that's contract administration, not your area. But
Right.
another company, we could have had 2 or 3 companies participating in this. If we're getting the same price, then we could have other companies participate. Why give it all to one company?
Well, we have one company that that's all we need to supply this particular fuel. And keep in mind, they all bid the same in terms of the OPUS pricing. What is the difference is the differential fee, which is basic delivery, which is a tiny, tiny, tiny piece of this. It's not substantial at all. So they would all have to use the same OPUS price for the southeast region of the United States. So that part of it is not going to change. It's a small, tiny, tiny piece for delivery. In this case, it's just, pennies on the gallon.
Yeah, just respectfully, I'm going to vote against it. Sometime before you leave, Mr. Spearman, I would love to have another conversation with you about how you think we should handle situations like this. Thanks.
Councilmember Clendenin.
So and kind of to clarify where Councilman Carlson was going, if I heard correctly, and I think I've got this straight, in 2022, this initial contract was put out. And so it was a 2-year. 2020. And then in 2022, we had a potential of extending it for 2 years. So I think what Councilman Carlson's question would have been, was there an option of not extending it and putting it out for an RFP in 2022? Or is that just an automatic extension for 2 years? Was it the city?
It was originally awarded as a contract with a 2-year term with 2 additional 1-year terms.
And whose option was it to extend it for 2?
This is up to the fleet department and basically purchasing.
So I think that was the point that Councilman Carlson was getting at. Is that why didn't we put it out for RFP in 2022? I'm okay. I'm actually going to vote in favor of this, but I think that's where it was getting, is that 2022 point of when you had a decision whether to put it out for RFP again or not. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I could,
Honestly, when we came before you, sorry to interrupt, Councilman. Yeah, we did come before you in 2022 to extend it for 2 years. And at that time, we could have absolutely had this conversation and revisited it. And now we're in contract with Rogers Petroleum until 2024. And again, what we're asking for today is simply the ability to pay them the amount that you approved funding for last month.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
You're welcome,
I mean,
Councilman.
a couple quick analogies would be if there are 3 gas stations, Exxon, Chevron, Mobil, Mobil and Chevron, Exxon are the same. But anyway, if there are 3 different gas stations, we could buy all of our gas from one, or we could go to all 3 and share. Or if we go to the same restaurant every day, but we could go to 3 different restaurants, why not go to 3 different restaurants? That's the point I make. We could share it.
Move a resolution?
So moved.
We have a motion from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Miranda, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye? Nay. We have a nay from Councilmember Carlson.
And Viera absent.
Yes, ma'am, and Hurtak
And
is
Hurtak.
absent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next up, we have Sharisha Hills for item number 125. I believe we asked for staff to be present.
You mean short timer?
The maker of the motion is not here, so
these days.
I'm gonna keep it short.
Is this your last report, Ms. Hills?
This is. Yes, ma'am.
Well, make it good.
Yes, ma'am. You want to start? Want to start?
Osir Nguyen, Administrator of Neighborhood and Community Affairs. Council, you asked us to come before you today on item 125 to provide the upgraded changes as they relate both to the Mayor's Youth Corps and the Teens Leading Change. So we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Yes, ma'am.
And Ms. Nguyen, you and I talked about this already during our briefing, but I just wanted to bring it out to the public. In a lot of the times or in the report itself, it talked about teens leading change, not knowing they'd had the access to the same things that the mayor's youth corps had. So I just wanted you to be able to explain that to the public so that they understand what was found during the process and what the new process is going to be going forward.
Yes, ma'am. So by going through this exercise, we did uncover that there were some differences there as a result of that the differences will allow us to have more of an equitable program between Teens Leading Change and the Mayor's Youth Corps. First thing I want to point out is that the major thing that we were able to do in order to implement those changes was to have a budget dedicated to Teens Leading Change. So in the FY24 budget, what you would see as one of the items is a line item specifically for Teens Leading Change. Prior to this, how we're operating now is that from each of the recreation centers where we have those programs, we'll draw from those budgets, and we've been able to make it work. What this exercise has allowed us to do is to see what are some programs that we can actually introduce into the Teens Leading Change project programs, and having the buy-ins from the staff there who are actually leading these teen programs, so that they can help develop what that will look like for these specific areas. Did I answer your question?
Yes, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for not only looking at this, but figuring out how we can, but using the evidence you found to try to improve the program. And I really look forward to seeing that line item and, coming back to share what is working, what's not working, how we can really improve upon the program as it grows.
Yes, ma'am.
And I really appreciate your attention to this.
You're more than welcome.
Councilmember Henderson.
I don't have anything.
No? Anybody else? Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Then I'm just going to go ahead right now, and if you don't mind, just put a, what do you think a good update, like 6 or 8 months? Because obviously we're going to want to give it some time.
The budget
Starts in October.
October, so we need some time after. In October is what, 3 months?
Yeah, maybe sometime around
How
spring
about-
break, so
What
it gives
about
them time to get.
spring break, somewhere to
Okay,
next
so like
spring?
April
After spring break.
or
Yeah.
March?
March, usually mid-March is spring
Okay,
break.
let's do March, and we have dates, believe it or not. So thank you for whoever does calendars, love you. March
The best.
7th.
That'll be work.
Okay,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
I'm gonna make a motion for you to come back on March 7th to update us on the progress of both of the programs and the changes that you've initiated.
Okay, I just want to make sure, Councilwoman Henderson, did I say that was before spring break?
That is before spring break.
Oh, I'm sorry, did you say after?
Well,
No, after is fine, we can,
Preferably.
it doesn't have to be, but
Okay.
I was just thinking, because for whatever reason, if they're gonna be with the kids during spring break because of summer programming
Oh,
during that week.
okay. Well, then how about March 28th?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be
Okay.
great.
We have a
So,
motion from Councilmember Hurtak for a report on March 28th, just an update. Second from Councilmember Carlson, all in favor?
Aye. Thank you so much.
Thank you, you're more
Thank
than
you very
welcome.
much. Next up, Mr. O'Hara, item number 128. And this is regarding the tax roll estimate. Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Council. Dennis Guerrero, Chief Financial Officer. And as the Chair said, this is item 128, concerns the maximum millage and the available funding from our taxable value increase for the next fiscal year. We've provided a staff report, and I have some additional information based on Councilwoman Hurtak's and I discussion earlier this week. If I can put the Elmo up. I'm gonna get this wrong, aren't I? Just like everybody. This contains the information within my staff report and again, some additional information. I'll run down it real quick and then of course be happy to answer any questions. You see the certified taxable value for the current year, fiscal year 23, was almost $50.7 billion. and the fiscal year 24 certified taxable value from the property appraiser is almost $56.6 million. As we stated in our staff report, that's an approximate 11.7% increase. It's great, very strong, we're happy to have it. A reminder that the current millage is 6.2076 mils. Based on the current millage, that's anticipated to generate what you see there, a total of just under $334 million. The additional funding contained in my staff report is that almost $35 million. And you see how we are compelled to split that between the general fund and the community redevelopment agencies. I think between this additional information and my staff report, I think we've responded to the motion and answered your question, and I can answer any additional questions.
Councilwoman Hurtak.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you getting the property appraiser's tax roll estimate, but I still really would love
Sorry.
the millage rate, not necessarily the exact number that you're considering, but a range would be great. I did notice that the county got their budget yesterday. And they're actually going to be voting on their millage rate on July 27th.
Okay.
Now, we don't get our we will not find out what the millage rate is that the city is proposing until August 3rd.
Yes, ma'am.
It is due in to the property appraiser's office on August 4th.
Yes.
So we have no time in which to consider it, which is why I've asked for at least a ballpark range. And I have asked multiple times, and I actually asked the mayor yesterday, and she said no, that it will be on August 3rd. And again, it's something I think the public doesn't necessarily need to know a number ahead of time, but a range. I know, and it has been a prediction, and we have been led to understand that we are looking at a millage increase. But what might that look like is something that would allow the seven of us to prepare better. It does not have to be out in the public, but now that it is, I'm just disappointed that we really are not, we won't even have 24 hours to have this budget before that millage rate has to go in. The budget is our responsibility.
Councilmember Carlson.
Yeah, I think the administration doesn't read the charter when it doesn't benefit them. Maybe next year what we should do is turn this around and make sure that city council is running this instead of the administration. Just because prior city councils allowed prior mayors to bully them doesn't mean that this one is going to do it. I would recommend that if the administration is so disrespectful of the city council and the public that they give notice of this on August 3rd, the day before it's ready, I think the city council should unanimously vote it down to make a statement that the administration should notify us in advance and let the administration deal with the repercussions of having it rejected. Nobody has briefed me at all on any kind of millage increase, and I've asked for a rollback. If there is any increase whatsoever, you all know that I'm going to be against it. I'm going to vocally argue against it. I'll rally everybody I know in the community against it, which is probably why you haven't told me that yet. This administration wastes tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars a year and on frivolous projects, which I've proven, and I can go through all that again. But if you all recommend a millage increase, you're going to have a war in the community. If you don't have a millage rollback because of all the wasteful spending, you're probably also going to have feedback from the community. Roll it back by 0.001% so that we can show the public that we're consider their money. But when we waste money on things like Hannah Avenue and we go radically over budget on things like the East Coast Park and we don't hold things up for RP like we just discussed, the public expects that we're going to reduce the budget because we've got too much to waste. The water department was, I think, $10 million over budget. And when I asked questions about how to roll back that budget, suddenly they put an RFP for $10 million for planning. There's so much wasteful spending in this city. And as I've said before, the administration maybe needs to read the charter. We're half the government. There's only two branches of government here. The administration cannot disrespect us We're part of the government. Just because they think they can count to 4 doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen and that the public's not going to be up in arms. That the mayor barely won the election with no opposition, got 60% of the vote. And so where's the mandate for all of this that you all are pushing forward and you're disrespecting city council? It's ridiculous.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, can I respond, please?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Thank you, thank you. Again, I defer all questions regarding the charter to the city attorney's office. As we've said before, historically, the mayor identifies the maximum millage, and the mayor back-briefed me on the discussion she had with you, Councilwoman, and I'm happy to continue taking that message back. I know we have talked about that. In terms of the statement you made, Councilman Carlson, we probably haven't told you the millage because you would like a rollback. Very aware that you like a rollback scenario, sir, and we will entertain that. But to clarify, we haven't told anybody any millages because we don't have one yet. Again, the wasted money assertions that you continue to surface, we are happy to look at those. If you'll reach out to me, if you'll reach out to my office and itemize those.
Publicly and
I'm
privately,
sorry,
I brought up concern.
Mr. Chair, I'm not finished yet. On the water department, we have talked about that before, and again, I'm happy to discuss it with you one more time. The water department fund balance is very large, and it's by design, and it is in keeping with the 20-year pipes program. If we alter that, again, it will change the dynamics of the debt service and change the dynamics of the $3 billion project. Thank you.
Councilwoman Henderson.
Councilman Carlson said quite a bit. I don't know where to start per se, but the presentation that you gave us earlier in my new career here as a city councilwoman was very detailed regarding the budget and the areas in which we allocate funding. In terms of waste, I just actually did not see that. I do question things like things that have already been decided. East Tampa keeps coming up, Hannah Street keeps coming up, but you know, $25 million to the wonderful Strass Center is also a lot of money, and I can consider that waste. And that would be not fair because you all have already decided on that as a council, just like we've already decided on Hannah Street, we've already decided on Fair Oaks. And I just want to make sure that what I'm communicating is that if there is going to be a millage increase, can you give us the history right now as if there's ever been an increase in the millage rate in the past, few years, decades, whatever the case may be? And if the possibility of just rolling out a what-if scenario, if we increase it at 0.5% or a percentage or 2% or 3%, this is what it could look like, and have that presented to us on this August date. The August 4th question, though, does seem valid with Councilwoman Hurtek is saying as well, because we won't have enough time to consider it. So maybe that's something you can also take back to the mayor's office.
I will, ma'am, and I'm sorry, I just want to answer your question before I forget. Yes, we can provide you a millage history for the city of Tampa. It has been increased and been decreased either through mayoral and city council action or coinciding with the Great Recession by state legislative mandate. But we'll provide that to you.
Yeah, and just because of the process and the timeline, I don't like the assertion that, we would all be encouraged to vote against it simply because of this particular timeline. Because that's not necessarily something that's a resolution or an ordinance that's required, correct? The timeline? It is? Okay. Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Martin Shelby, City Council Attorney. This is an interesting discussion, Council, but it's also a process question. It's both a charter question and a process question. And historically, as you know, the way this has been, particularly for the past several decades, with the situation being what it is with 2 recessions, one great, one near great, there's never been an issue where, to the point where this council has heard from the community and has realized the needs that have yet to be fulfilled in City of Tampa's growth. The reason I raise that now is because that discussion of perhaps a potential millage rate is on the table. So that being said, setting the millage is a legislative function. clearly, and that is on the second public reading, you set the millage. That is set by state law, that is set by charter, that you're acting as a legislative body, you set the millage. Historically, and maybe Mr. Massey wants to get into the subject of the legislature creating the trim notice, which is the maximum millage rate that you can raise it to. You cannot raise your millage higher than what is notified by the local government to the Department of Revenue unless, and you can get into that. That question had come up before, and the city attorney at the time told city council what a tremendous logistics expense and cost expense it is to do that at the last minute if, when you get the recommended budget, if somewhere down the line, a mayor recommends a maximum millage rate and notifies the Department of Revenue of a maximum millage rate that is less than what the legislative body wants, you are then, in a sense, having your hands tied to the maximum millage rate that was sent into the Department of Revenue as required by state law, in this case on August 4th. So this is really two things. It is a logistics question, and of course your charter now has how long in advance it has to be presented to city council. I believe it's 45 days.
Correct.
So that's why, for instance, Hillsborough County got theirs yesterday, but you're not going to get yours till August 3rd. So that being the case, I just think that in terms of the context and the logistics, the issue of the maximum millage rate is necessary to be discussed if it should become an issue down the road, because at the second public hearing, you don't want to be in a position where you cannot do what you want to as a legislative body because you are precluded by something that was done administratively.
Yes, sir.
Morris Massey, Legal Department. What Mr. Shelby has said is generally correct. Just to clarify, you all approve the millage rate. So the millage rate will be approved by you in the budget process. So if you're not happy with the proposed millage rate that the mayor has proposed, you can alter it during the budget approval process. That is within your purview to do. What Mr. Shelby is saying is that if you want to increase the millage rate above what is shown in the trim notice, it can be done, but it requires that we renotice all the property owners within the city of Tampa before you take action on it, and that's why it is logistically a difficult item to occur. But that's within your purview still. So but the way the charter reads and it's set up, yes, you all, the budget is yours, but after it's proposed by the mayor. So that's why the millage rate and the initial or the millage rate that goes into the Department of Revenue form and that becomes part of the trim notices is generally done by the administration, is because the charter reads it is the mayor's budget until she proposes it to you, and then then it's your budget, and then you have the option to alter, make recommendations to change it, to change the proposed millage rate at that time. So I just wanted to clarify how that process works.
Councilman Clendon.
A couple of statements, and then before I do that, I have a question. Yeah. Is it within the council's purview to, and I know it's too late for this fiscal year, but in future fiscal years, to request the mayor present the budget by a specific date?
That is set forth in your charter presently.
So that's it. Okay, so we'd have to have a charter amendment. Okay, very good.
Part of the, and let me interrupt just briefly. I mean, part of the idea that, I think there's a budget workshop coming up at the end of, have we already had that then?
We had a budget workshop. We anticipate another budget workshop in August after council receives the recommendation.
Part of the idea of having the workshop in June is that some of this discussion would occur as part of the budget workshop, so you could begin talking about these issues at that time, so that we're not waiting till August 3rd or 4th that these things be more crystallized. So that's just FYI.
So, a couple of observations as somebody, this is the first budget process that I've participated in. I think one of the things that Councilman Carlson has said, that, and I think it makes sense to me, and maybe somebody will have to convince me that it doesn't, because I kind of concur with them with City Council's ability to hire a budget analyst to be able to go through this and assist us with this process. So I think in the future, I think that's something we need to strongly look at, so that we have someone that can do that in the next budget again. So, we're starting from where we are today with this new council, and we move forward. Some things I do, although I want to take some issues with who I I respect dearly, Councilman Carlson, on some of the statements that were made, because I just feel like as the public watches this, you know, as we prepare our budget, you know, I look through these things and I don't necessarily see, you know, do I think that everything is good? Maybe not, but I wasn't here to pass these things. But, you know, we're working with the budget that we have. I don't see the waste and abuse. And I understand the issues that he brought forth, and I have the same concerns. And I'm sorry, even with, like, we talk about the recreational complex. It's not that the recreational complex I have issues with the escalation of prices. I have issues with that, I do. But now as we move forward with creating a brand new budget, I think we have to really assess where we are in the city of Tampa in our growth model and citizens' expectations. We have a great deal of needs. We just signed off on a very lucrative contract for our public employees, which put, you know, a lot of stress on our budget, and which was well deserved, well needed. We have a lot of we have a lot of inflation that affect our employees, and they deserve to be compensated accordingly. That being said, the city of Tampa is growing. We have a lot of needs in the city of Tampa. We have a lot of infrastructure that we have to maintain. And my observation as a citizen, you know, 37 plus year citizen here, is that we're not doing a good job of maintaining our infrastructure. So at the same time we have to maintain our infrastructure, we have to grow infrastructure because people keep going and we have to build things and we have to do things. So the needs of the city of Tampa are not being met. We have roads that need to be paved. We have sidewalks that need to be installed where we don't have sidewalks. We have parks that need to be maintained, regardless of the increase in the number of parks or the capability, which we need to do to compensate for the growth of the city of Tampa. Our current parks are, in many cases, dilapidated. Our equipment is not there. We saw in our parks report this great deal of need that we have. We have docks that need to be replenished. We have seawalls that need to be rebuilt. We have resiliency for the city of Tampa that needs to be dealt with as we deal with climate change and rising sea levels. So that all being said, you know, I'm sure that yes, in a $2 billion budget that we can go through and we can find some areas that we can make some improvements. But in the bigger picture, when we start talking about budgets, I think that we are looking at a greater need for the city of Tampa to be able to accomplish these things for the expectation of the people that live here. And it's my expectation too. I want to live in a wonderful city that provides services and be able to maintain my roads. I want to be able to turn right or left out of my house and not hit a pothole and bend the rims of my car. So as we present that budget, I'm looking forward to working with the administration, and I'm hoping that as the budget is presented, there's very specifics in there about the needs of repaving residential streets, about the needs of putting in sidewalks, about improving intersections, and the things that really mean something for the people that live in this. You know, let's get back to basics about the things that really mean something in the city of Tampa. And I know we have to do, you know, we have to keep all the balls in the air. Not only do we have to meet the needs of the current residents of the city of Tampa, we have to accommodate the growth of the city of Tampa. But I'm hoping to see those types of specifics in the budgets, and I look forward to working with the administration to make that happen.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, go on.
That is exactly the reason that I would like a millage increase, at least, it's why I would like a millage increase estimate, like just a range, because we do have a lot of needs. And I am not. I know that some of my colleagues are opposed to raising the millage rate. I am not. But I feel like I need some information ahead of time so I can make some calculations on what I would like to see as well, because this is a give and take. And the first time we're going to see this budget, and I always say, I absolutely hate surprises. I hate them. Not a favorite thing of mine. And I can be known, I'll admit, I can be known for not necessarily reacting well to surprises, because I don't. That's just who I am. I like to get information ahead of time. County actually gets their budget the night before it's presented. So they have time to just look at it and digest it. No one in the county, no one is worried about them sharing it with a newspaper or doing anything like that. It's just simply a respectful thing so they get a chance to absorb it. And I just feel like getting a mill range to really think about it and to absorb the ideas is very valuable to me. It enables me to start thinking about what what the administration is thinking about. I've heard the needs, but I don't know numbers associated with that. And I know you're working on that, but you have to be working within a range. There's no way it's taking you until August 3rd to come up with that number. It just isn't. You'll have that number. And I'm just not sure why we can't get a range, even if it's just privately. A one-on-one, saying, hey, this is what we're looking at, just being really honest and forthright, and that's the idea of what this administration has promised to do with us as council, is to really do a back and forth. And again, I said to you very clearly in the meetings we've had that I am absolutely not opposed to it. We haven't had millage rates in a while, and if we go to very specific things, we're going to listen to what the public has to say. But if the public wants roads improved or focusing on parks, we can do that. But right now, we're also looking at huge increases in the cost of just doing business because of inflation. We do this every day, but we don't have the bird's eye view that you do and how you look at it. So we're not coming into this with that same view of knowing, oh, okay, about overall our budget, we're running 6% up. Like, I don't know that going in. Again, just having that background knowledge beforehand really primes and prepares me so I'm not surprised. And so I kind of know what to expect. I understand that this budget is for us as council, but it's also for the public. And I think that letting the council know what's going on is fair. So again, I'm going to ask for a range, ideally, by the end of next week, to just be able to think about. Again, even a percentage of what we're looking at or what we saw as inflation. You and I talked about it broadly, but not really what we're facing. And I don't need big numbers, but just a percentage. What's about the percentage? So I can really start thinking about those numbers and coming in to the budget with a headspace.
Is that a motion?
Might as well make it.
Yeah, I'm going to make a motion to, again, it can be a personal one-on-one with council members, just a phone call, meeting, whatever, by today's the 13th, 14th, so 21st, July 21st, of a range of millage rate and a percentage overall of what we've seen inflation-wise, so that we can get our head in the right space to prepare for what the administration is asking for with the budget. I wholeheartedly look forward to working collaboratively on the budget once we see what you all are hoping to get, what your plan is. But being prepared would be nice.
Motion from Councilwoman Hurtak, second from Councilman Carlson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Councilmember Miranda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. O'Hara, let me just go over a few facts and make sure that my numbers are right. What you stated on the numbers you put on the screen was $50,685,580,554. That's what you said the value of the price. So then the second thing, I believe you said you were 11.7% over last year's,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, sir.
So then on my calculator, you're telling me the last year was about $44.8 billion. Am I correct?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, you're 1 year behind, sir. The 50.685 billion was for the current fiscal year, and the 11.7% increase, if I can point here, I'm a visual guy. The 11.7% increase leads to that number right there.
Oh, I see. I was looking at only at the so it's at 56, so it's about a little less than $6 billion more.
Yes.
All right, so then, when you look at the current millage, and if I remember from last year, it was the first year that the total amount of money collected in cash on the city of Tampa on this type of taxation did not meet the requirements to pay only the fire and the police, am I correct?
Correct, sir.
If I remember that, then we go further on, that last year was the first year in maybe 10 years that I recall that it was the first time that it was about $25.5 million short. it always been like $50 million short.
Yes, the anticipated shortages
Right,
were always
so
great.
I'm going by memory, so I may make a few mistakes here. I'm not as smart as most, but when you have a situation, and I've heard Hannah Project so many times that I'm gonna name, if I ever had another child, I'm gonna name him or her Hannah, so I can remember him forever, her forever. It's just something, and you know, if those big actors can do it, so can I. So what I'm trying to say is that being said, that amount is a figure that we need to provide the basic needs for the citizens of the city of Tampa. So when you look at the Hannah Project, and I've listened to this for a long time, and in fact, I heard something today at 10:26 to 10:28 a.m., we should have an investigation of every council member, what I heard today, including the mayor's office and every employee of the city of Tampa, because I'm tired of listening to things that are maybe factual, maybe not. But if you have something to say regarding me or anyone else, and you want to go to the FDLE or you want to go to work, go do it. Stop talking about it, go do it. File something, do something. So it's just, you're having a city that's number 1, 2, or 3 in many categories and different things. I never in my life thought the city of Tampa would be a destination point for vacationers. I'll be very sincere with you, but it is. I never figured that the millenniums would come here and stay here that were not born here, and they have. Why is that? It's for various reasons. First of all, climate. Second of all, you only have 2 seasons here, Christmas and summer. That's number 1. Number 2, you have education opportunities now that you didn't have when the University of Tampa was very little. You didn't even know about it anywhere. Now, because of the masterful job that the president has done, it's larger in population enrollment than Princeton and Wake Forest. When you look at University of South Florida, one of the better colleges in the whole United States, and you look at other values and other opportunities that are here now, there were no tech companies here. None. All you had was cigar rollers and people working American can, Continental can, or Reynolds aluminum. You had Ybor City that really shut down. You had downtown that nobody lived in. You had empty stores because we had Britton Plaza and Southgate that opened up. Now they about ready to close. Then you had the malls open up. Evolution changes things. You had West Shore Mall and others. They themselves are in trouble. They have to reinvent themselves. And West Shore Mall, as I understand it, will be like Big Town in the next few years. So all these things, you have to make changes as you go along. Then I hear things like, you should rent, never buy. Well, then we should never buy a house. When you look at the water department and the money they have there, it's for a reason. Let me tell you what the reason is. Only 1 of 2 in the state of Florida that have a AAA rating in the bond market. And you mentioned that just very slightly earlier. That means you have a better rate. If that $10 billion is gone and other things are gone, you're going to owe more money on your loans than ever before. City of Tampa Water Department is only 1 of 13 water departments in the whole United States of America that has a AAA rating, and I challenge anyone to change that. And yet, we're not happy with that. That's all I can tell you. So what I'm saying is, I've done something criminally wrong, put my ass in jail, but stop talking about it. That's all I'm saying. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. All right, item number 130.
Thank you, Council.
Dennis, are you going to be reaching out to us individually by the 21st of July?
I will.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Council.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good afternoon. Dana Crosby Collier with the City Attorney's Office. We have a PowerPoint for this
Yes,
item.
It's coming up. Yes, there
Thank
it
you.
is.
Okay. So on, this update is to update you on Senate Bill 102, which passed the legislature on March 28th. It was immediately certified to the governor, and he signed it on March 29th. The bill took effect July 1. So on April 13th, Councilmember Carlson made a motion requesting that we bring a report back on Senate Bill 102 at the meeting on July 13th. So here we are today. We're going to break this up into two parts. I'm going to talk about the bill and just give you a summary about the bill itself. And then Eric will step up and talk to you about the plans and what processes and whatnot we have in place for implementation of Senate Bill 102. So the bill is huge. I mean, really big, about 100 pages. It goes into everything from zoning and land use. It goes into surplus land, funding, tax incentives, and other provisions in the law. As I mentioned, it was approved by the governor on March 29th, 2023. We started meeting right away as staff and having weekly work group meetings. On June 16th, we held a potential applicant/stakeholders meeting over on North Boulevard to hear from the community, let them know where we were, hear what they, were thinking and how they were thinking we would implement this item. And on June 23rd, we took the presentation to the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, let them know the update. And as I said, the effective date's July 1, so we're just brand new into the new world of Senate Bill 102 in cities and counties. Just to give you the overview of the bill, and Eric will focus on the implementation. The big issue that, that stunned, I think, everyone, or just was a big surprise, it was a huge matter policy-wise, is that the legislature has precluded local zoning opportunities with regard to affordable housing in multifamily mixed-use, for multifamily and mixed-use residential properties that are going to be placed in commercial, industrial, or mixed-use zoning districts. Now, there are requirements that are required in the law in order for this project to be considered a Senate Bill 102 or Live Local Act project. A minimum of 40% of the units must be affordable. 120, that would be 120% of our median income, which is I think a little over $80,000 for a family of four. The affordability period for that project is 30 years, so there has to be some commitment by the developer to keep those properties, those 40%, affordable for 30 years. And if it's a mixed-use project, 65% of the square footage of the project must be residential, and a minimum of that, 40% of a minimum, would be affordable. You don't have to come in and get a land use or zoning change if you're in a commercial or industrial area and you want to place one of these projects on the property. The approval is by administrative action. So, as I said, it precludes local authority in certain areas. We talked about the zoning part. Now, practically speaking, what your project looks like, it preempts local authority in the density area, the height area of development, and also the legislature stated that locals shall consider reduced parking. So we also in the legislative language, it requires that you use land development regulations for multifamily zoning. So if there's a project going into a commercial site, you use your land development regs for multifamily zoning. There's a surplus land component to this new law, and as you know, we do prepare an inventory every 3 years. Under the law, the new list would be prepared by October 1 of 2023. It must be published. It includes your dependent special districts such as a CRA, properties that are available to either be subject to a long-term lease or subject to sale and development. So cities are also encouraged in counties to adopt best practices for their surplus land program. And we do have to publish this property on the website, which the city of Tampa currently does. There were a lot of incentives, financial incentives associated with this bill, $252 million in state housing and initiative partnership, $259 to the sale program, $100 million to the Hometown Hero program, $100 million inflation loan for sale. And it also provides property tax exemptions for certain properties that are affordable housing. And it also allows sales tax exemptions for some building materials when you're constructing affordable housing. So there's a lot of financial incentives stated in the bill. Additionally, as you've probably read in the paper, cities and counties are now preempted from enacting rent control ordinances. We must post our expedited permitting procedures online so that they're readily available. The Live Local Act requires that we identify conservation lands that might possibly be used for multifamily rental housing. And it also created a number of new programs, Live Local program, the Hometown Heroes Act, the Affordable Housing Catalyst program. So all of that is established in the law. And now I'm going to turn it over to Eric, and he's going to talk to you about how the city of Tampa intends to implement the project. Yes, ma'am.
Can I just ask a couple of questions now before we switch?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So going back to the timeline, I'm really curious because we do land use here. This is where we make a lot of those decisions. Is there a reason we were not on that timeline, speaking to each of us individually?
Well, we're here today to brief you overall, but no, ma'am, we went out to the community. This is an administrative process. So when someone comes in through the door, just so I explain how we're going to implement this within the city or how we intend to, they will come in and do an application. If they're intending to go through the Live Local process, that becomes an administrative process, so the council will never hear that item or any aspect of it. If they come in through the door and they have other requirements, other needs, other things they intend to do on their project site, then that would be a regular PD process. We would then take the application, it would become a PD application, and it would go through the normal process.
But that is true, but not true. It is true in that what you said, if you go back one slide, for the things that the law requires. The law simply requires density, and can you please go back one slide?
I don't have.
One more.
Hold on.
There you go. There you go. It preempts density, height, and we have to consider reduced parking.
Right.
But all of the other things that are being talked about are actually council purview.
The zoning is also preempted.
Exactly. But additional things, and the process is not, and I know Eric's going to get into that, and that's where I really have the main issue with this. But I also want to ask, you mentioned conservation land. We have to consider conservation. What do you mean by conservation land?
I mean, I did not write the bill, so we have been working from what we're given, which is a 100-page bill with a lot of terminology, a lot of issues. They did ask that cities, counties, and other local entities, and that could be your special districts as well, look at conservation lands and determine what lands may be used for development of affordable housing.
So parks?
No, conservation. Lands that are placed into an easement, a conservation easement, or some other mechanism that's recorded in the public records, like through the water management district. When you come in with a development, sometimes you set aside a large area of land for conservation or some other type of an easement, and then you record the easement over that land, and it shouldn't really be developed unless that easement's released. So they have stated that the local agencies that are implementing this act shall look at those lands and see if there's development opportunities in those lands.
So we're talking about like coastal areas?
No, it'd be more like, think of wetland's a bad example because wetlands are very protected and it's very expensive to mitigate a wetland, and you surely probably wouldn't use that for affordable housing. But if you think in your mind of something like a wetland, when you see a development like New Tampa where there's a lot of wetland, and a lot of that land, you see it on the map, is green. And the reason it's green is because a conservation easement or some other type of protective easement has been placed over that property. So what the legislature's asked communities to do is look at properties they have in a protected type easement status and see what might be available for development.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, sir, go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, council. Get this PowerPoint back up, let's see. Implementation. So just following up on a lot what Dana just basically stated. Again, it's allowed in any of the commercial, industrial, or mixed use. And on the next slide, I have a list of all those that are up there. Again, this is the slide you just saw from Dana. 40% of the units have to be affordable up to 120 AMI. Has to be reserved for affordability for at least 30 years. In mixed-use development, 65% of that development has to be used for residential, and of that 65%, 40% has to be, a minimum has to be affordable. Now, we're proposing that in a mixed-use development, this is something that goes back a couple of years ago when council was discussing this. For mixed-use developments, 10% has to be a non-residential development. We're going to encourage individuals not to do a X number of square foot development and do a postage-size stamp of non-residential. If you're going to do a mixed-use development, it should definitely be a mixed-use development. And again, this is going to be an administrative process. So yes, ma'am.
So is the law saying in mixed use 65% of the total square footage, or is that what you all are wanting?
That's the state, right? That's the state legislation.
Sorry.
No. Oh.
Question, that's a minimum, not a maximum. In other words, you're talking about a postage stamp. To make something.
Yeah, what I was saying if somebody's doing a mixed-use development, they would be required to do at least 10% non-residential of that square footage. So 100,000 square foot development, 65,000 would have to be residential, and 10,000 of that would have to be a non-residential.
And that's in the state statute.
The 10,000 is not in the state statute.
And where is that?
That's coming from the city.
Now, when you say the city, who?
Staff. Zoning, we've had numerous.
Can we allow the completion of the presentation and then take questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Again, there's no required change to land use or to the zoning designation, so you might see a piece of property that's currently industrially zoned with an industrial land use coming in and having a residential component to it now. And again, this is required to be an administrative process, no longer requires somebody to go before city council or in the Hillsborough County, the county commission or whatever to get the approval. Again, this is the different districts that would allow for it. The city has a lot of non-residential zoning districts that would be eligible for the live local requirements. So we are preempted. So the preemptions are we cannot restrict density below the highest density allowed on our comp plan, which is RMU 100. 100 units per acre, 2.5 minimum FAR for mixed-use developments. And the maximum height is based on what's within 1 mile of the site or 3 stories, whichever is greater. So if within 1 mile of a site there's a 7-story building, a Live Local Act development could come in at 7 stories. Again, FAA, Hillsborough County Aviation Authority, those will always preempt the Live Local requirements. So actually, the federal government will be preempting the state. We are proposing, as Dana said at the beginning of her presentation, one of the things that we're encouraged to look at is reduced number of required parking spaces. Some of the developments that have come through for affordable housing, Casa Del Mar, which just had their grand opening about 2 weeks ago, West River, have come in at about a 0.8 number of parking spaces. So if somebody's coming in for a mixed development, they have a percentage as affordable and a percentage that is market rate. The affordable would be calculated at, we're proposing 0.8 spaces per unit, where the market rate would be at the standard requirements of code, which is 1.5 for a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment. Requiring minimum of 1 loading space. And for multi-family developments, we're proposing to use the RM75 standards, which requires a 25 front, 20 rear, 7 sides. When you go above 30 feet, anything above that 30-foot mark has to get, for every 4 feet above that, you have to inset that portion above the building above 1 foot, so you get like the wedding cake approach kind of thing. Mixed-use developments would follow what we currently do, like for storefront residential, which is the underlying zoning, which is generally CG, where those are allowed in, which is 10, 10, and 10. What's not preempted, I should probably move this forward. Hold on a second. What's not preempted by the state, the city still retains control over. Tree retention requirements, they're still the same. Stormwater, still the same. Floodplain management, still the same. Overlay district, historic districts, we still get to control that. That is not preempted by the state. So if somebody wanted to try to do something in one of the historic districts, they still have to go through that process, get a certificate of appropriateness, get that judge, get that decision made, and make sure it's compatible with the development that's in the area. We're proposing buffering with 8 foot for the vehicle use area, which is the standard in the code for right now. Now, we are proposing a reduction in landscaping. Generally speaking, it's 350 square feet per unit. We're recommending 100 square feet per unit for the affordable housing portion of it, or 6,000 square feet, depending upon which is greater. 75 square feet or 5,000 square feet greater if you start to aggregate. So instead of just having it in a strip, if you create like a park, a dog park, a playground or something for the housing development, you could reduce your overall parking. Council has granted, there was a rezoning recently that only had about 30 square feet per apartment complex. I mean, per unit. That was just recently approved by council at first reading. Implementation, again, this is going to run through with my team. There was a memo that was written by myself, the legal department, and Abby, which came together. We have some standards that we were proposing. You have to submit an application like you would any other application in the city of Tampa. A commitment to complete the transfer station study by the time you go to apply for your building permit. Again, you have to provide the affidavit for 30 years for affordable housing. And that actually, I guess, is a deed restriction that it would be recorded saying that these are going to be out of 100 units, 75 of these are going to be live local, and they have to be at affordability standards for the 30 years. I believe the housing and community development team will be the ones who monitor that portion of it. We are proposing to treat it almost like the same way as a PD. You'll have to have a detailed site plan submitted. The fees are the same as a plan development. 60-day staff review. The applicant can ask for one 30-day extension, so the maximum review time would be 90 days. If we deny, if staff level is a denial for the live local proposal, it's in a 119 appeal, which means it goes to the deputy administrator, who is Abby Feely. We are going to be proposing, we have a web page in design. It has not gone live yet. As far as I know, it should go live either tomorrow or early next week. We do have an application already prepared. I did meet with one group whatever July 6th was, Thursday, who was looking at 2 sites, both commercial general in East Tampa, to look to utilize, they build 100% affordable, to use the Live Local Act requirements. Does council have any questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Again, I'm gonna go back with the question I had. There's a lot of "we" in here. And from my understanding of this law, the only thing that's preempted is zoning and density. But the average FAR, this green space, parking, none of that is part of the state law, correct?
That is correct.
So I'm not okay with staff taking that. I mean, really that power lies with us, generally speaking, and that's really the only way that this could possibly come in front of the public. So I'm not okay with changing any of those standards at all. I think everything should be absolutely the same. We're expecting this to change again, so I'm not really sure why. I mean, I'm sure the legislature will update it next year. So I'm not sure why you're coming to us saying you want to do this average FAR. Again, you didn't even come to us to ask individually what we thought to help craft this. And I object to anything that isn't strictly in the statute.
If I may respond to some of the issues that you raised, really the only 2 areas where staff has addressed issues that were not addressed in the Live Local Agreement or Live Local Act is with respect to the reduction with regard to the green space as well as the parking. And frankly, that consideration came as a result of how staff has approved other affordable housing projects in the city that did not come before council, as well as council's approvals of projects where this council has reduced the green space requirements and the parking requirements for other large mixed-use projects. So we took that into consideration, and the reason for that was the one thing I have heard since I joined the city is the need for affordable housing and the crisis that we're in. And this is an opportunity to look at that and embrace it and come up with an approach that's mandated by the state. We want to be able to look at the project holistically and not have it come in and get approved under Live Local and then go through the design exception process and have a multi-step process. So we wanted to treat these projects on equal footing as others that have been approved in the city. So that does go beyond what the Senate Bill 102 mandated. But with regard to the FAR, we had to come up with a way to address the mixed-use projects, because a mixed-use project is based on FAR, and the Live Local Act was silent on FAR. The Live Local Act talked about density and allowing the maximum density that is allowed within the city for residential development, which, as Mr. Cotton said, is RMU 100. So we had to address, how are we going to gauge the development potential for a mixed-use project?
And for me, again, reducing both landscape and parking is when it comes in front of us as a PD. It's also the only time that the public is allowed to weigh in. I understand that the state is preempting, so we don't have that power. So I'm not willing to give up the power that we do have. So if they have to come in front of us to get landscape and parking reductions, that should happen still. It's the only way the public is going to be allowed to weigh in on these decisions. It's the only way we're going to know what's going on. It's the little bit of power that we still have that the state has not preempted from us, and I am absolutely not willing to give that power up.
Nicole Travis, Administrator of Development and Economic Opportunity. And so I have a couple thoughts. The Live Local Act, as much as I believe in home rule and not being preempted by state, the Live Local Act was done in a way to help communities that are suffering in the housing crisis and create an administrative approval process that doesn't require you to go through a 4-month zoning process. Your calendars and schedules are already booked, and so we have taken what you have approved in prior cases and used that as an administrative function. So the 0.8 parking reduction is done through a design exception that does not come to you already. The green space does through a variance process. The 0.8 parking reduction does not. You don't see that right now. You may see it coupled in a PD with a bunch of other things going on, but the parking reduction is not. And quite honestly, if I'm being honest with you, our code on parking is ridiculous, right? It requires too much parking. And so we are trying to help development and affordable housing development. Actually, with the law mandates, the Live Local Act mandates that it must be done through an administrative process. So the parking is, we're trying to, so I have like so many thoughts going on. We did the Richmond property earlier today. You want additional density. The way that you get additional density is through a larger lot coverage. You can't have a lot of green space with more density. You have to, you can go up. You can go up, but your footprint has to be a little bit wider. That requires give and take on both sides. And so this Live Local Act and what staff has put forth is a process to administer this act in what we believe is fair. Whatever considerations you would like us to take back into consider, this is the administrative process that we're establishing on how we will deal with applications regarding the Live Local. But I do think that it's important for you to consider the hurdles that developers have to go through and the cost to go through the development, the time that it takes to go through development does not help us on the housing front. And this is to accelerate through that legislative process.
I really appreciate that description, and I also appreciate you bringing forth the Richmond project. You know, I didn't approve of that project because it didn't have enough density. But you know what it did have? A lot of community involvement. This takes that away. This absolutely, you're gonna be able to plop one of these down in the middle of South Tampa and they're not gonna be able to do anything about it.
Right.
So if we don't hold on to this as much as we can, so that the public is allowed to know about it, I feel like we absolutely, the public's gonna be absolutely outraged to know. I mean, again, this is a state law.
And they take it up with the state, right?
Yes, and I understand that, but we should not make it easier for the public to not know.
It's not about making it easier for the public. It's about the development and ultimately getting the housing units. And so while the Richmond project was approved today, when I went back and looked at the first hearing, there is contradictory statements. You want additional density, but the traffic was an issue. And so you can't do both. And so the same thing with density is you have to go up, but you also have to go out and cover lot coverage. So that covers the green space. It's not about making it or not letting the public know. If we can, once, we could go back and consider how we notify residents that the project is coming along. But I don't want to suggest a notification process because it gives a false hope that they have a say in something that they don't have a say in.
But I will say that we actually have that coming forward. One of the things that we're requesting in the notice is a notice of a project being submitted. That's a proposal.
You're talking about the notice of filing for the Good Neighbor notice.
Yes.
But this does not, this is a separate process.
Well, I would argue that we should do the same filing or, notification.
I would respectfully ask for you to allow us to talk about it and consider it, because what you would be doing if you do the notice of filing, you would be giving the public false hope that they have a say in a project that they have no say in. Because the notification of filing, right, is when we talked about the Good Neighbor notice with the neighborhood, you do the notice of filing so that the neighborhood associations can request a meeting with the developer so that early on in the project, before they get too far into so that's the purpose of it. If we do a notice of filing for an administrative process such as this, we're just telling them that the development is coming. There's no public input.
So you're saying that, what if a developer would be willing to meet with a neighborhood? You haven't put that thought out there, because generally speaking, we have done a better job of expecting developers to meet with neighbors, even if they didn't have to come in front of council.
Right.
I don't think that giving them the opportunity and letting the public know it's coming so that they could have the opportunity to meet with the developer ahead of time is a bad idea.
I don't think that it's a bad idea, but the spirit of the law is to accelerate development and to help affordable housing development through an administrative process that is less cumbersome in time in going through that 4-month zoning process. And so
it's only 3 months, though.
I'm sorry?
It's only 3 months. So it cuts it.
What's only 3 months?
The process, it's a 60 days plus 30
It's 60,
days.
but you could ask for a 30-day extension.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which zoning case have you gotten through in 3 months?
But I'm just saying, I'm not willing, the state is just gonna keep taking and taking and taking, and I'm not willing to give an inch more than I'm required to.
I understand, but so the only thing that's coming to mind right now is my island background. You don't cut your nose to spite your face, right? We need housing, and this is a process that this was mandated by the state. Now we're trying to make lemonade with the lemons that we were given. The state usually does that. They tell you to do something, don't tell you how to do it. And what we're presenting before you is how we will administratively deal with this.
But I do believe that while you're saying we, some of that belongs to us, that we have to say, okay, you can have this power. And I'm saying we need to have a conversation about it. And I do believe that the public needs to be part of the conversation so that they know what's coming forward. And because, yes, everybody's going to be super angry about this, but if we do a job to have more conversations with people and talk about what the public's expecting. Because like I said, I personally don't want to give any more than the state's requiring. But if the public says that they're willing to do X, Y, and Z, I absolutely, I'm curious what you got out of the meetings you had with community members, because I haven't heard of any community members that met about this. Carol Ann Bennett said she hadn't had a meeting. So I'm just really curious what groups were met with. And I really do, I appreciate all the work that went into this, but I absolutely think we need more conversation. We need more really thinking out, because I know the state will come with more. That's not a question. So I want to be as vague as possible to not put us in a corner too, because of whatever's going to come next. I don't want to codify anything. That's what I'm concerned about.
You're not.
But I'm also, the other thing though, one more thing. The other thing I'm concerned about is that we have given away so much, we've abdicated a lot of our authority over the years to staff. And I think, and you know, for whatever reason, some of that we're revisiting now. And this is my main hesitation with going forward.
Understood. The state says that it has to be administratively, not me.
Councilman Clendenin, and then Councilman.
Oh, the lovely state.
Huh? What'd you say?
I said the lovely state.
Oh, I know.
The free state.
The free state of Florida. You know, I understand. One, I have a question. I just want to just clarify for anybody else that's listening. This doesn't only applies to the zoning, the Euclidean zoning that is defined in the mixed use, commercial, industrial. It does not affect residential zone property.
Development coordination, yes, sir.
Okay, very good.
Single family, the RM districts, those are not part of the local.
Okay, so people listening, they know that you're not going on Coachman and this isn't affecting the property on Coachman. Okay, very good. And so, you know, in some ways, I concur a little bit with what Councilwoman Hurtek said. I think we should take maybe a go slow approach as far as, I understand that we have to implement what the state is mandating us implementing. But I think we need to kind of like take a little look-see and maybe not jump too quickly into codifying the above and beyonds, like the landscaping issue that we said. I'm kind of going with the parking thing, because I agree, and I think we should streamline. If we're routinely approving things, it makes sense to save people money and time to streamline things that we normally just routinely administratively approve anyway. So I get that. I'm a little apprehensive about this reduced landscaping issue.
Why? You guys approve zoning all the time with reduced
Well,
landscaping.
I hadn't been here that long, so you haven't seen me do much of that. So I'm concerned. I am concerned. That's one of the reasons why, you know, you referred to the Funland property. That's why I liked the initial designs of it with the higher buildings, because there was a lot more green space. So I enjoyed what was first, like, you know, I spoke with Abby, what was first discussed with that project, because there was a lot more green space, a lot more landscape, because they went up, not out as much. They went up and they had a lot more green space in that property. So that's the kind of stuff that I would look for, especially in a project like that. So I'm a little apprehensive about that. I say, go forward with the stuff that we have to go forward. If you have to go forward on the parking thing, I don't have a big problem with that, because we routinely do that. But above and beyond that, I would say let's take this slow. Let's see how it develops. Let's see how other municipalities deal with this. And then, you know, we'll jump into the fire when we have to.
Councilman Miranda.
Thank you, Chairman. In fact, what Councilmember Clendenin was saying, I think it was about 5 councils back, is the one that made the changes in the landscape ordinance, because we were in a severe drought back in the 90s, I believe it was, and late 90s, and we I think took out, I forget how many feet, regarding a single-family house that you could put down. You can't just go from side to side, from one lot in to the other lot in, if I recall that. And I don't think I'm incorrect, though. I think that's where it started.
Councilman Carlson.
Sorry, I don't recall the date at which is this in effect already?
Yeah, July 1.
July 1.
Yep.
I agree with what Councilmember Hurtak was saying. Ideally, what I'd like to see happen with your proposal is that somebody from staff would take it to the public and get input on it, and then bring it back to us. Ideally, it would be like a presentation to the Builders Association, FAN, and then just a community meeting, and bring it back. We need to hear how other jurisdictions are interpreting this, but I'd like to also hear the land use attorneys weigh in, and also the attorneys for the neighborhood associations, so that we can hear what the interpretations
The
are.
stakeholders that were mentioned that we met with were land use and developer attorneys, just kind of talking through the process. Again, the state gave us this 100-page document saying, do it. They don't tell you how to do it, and it's just was working through that process. But this memo that we've issued is establishing the process on how we would administratively approve anyone that wanted to take advantage of the Live Local Act. And for instance, the Richmond project technically could have, but because it already went through first reading, technically could have went through the Live Local Act, not have to do the like they wouldn't have had to do the community engagement meetings, if you will, but.
Could I just ask, can I make a motion, because we're late in the day, can I make a motion to ask that we ask for staff to give us an update on this on September 7th?
That's fine. Yes, yes, yes.
Can I get a second see if I get a second first?
I have to see. What do you want to say, Marty?
Yeah.
I think I need to know, my perspective, I haven't been briefed on this, frankly. And my observation is that this board represents every stakeholder in the city in that sense, and you're coming to it late in the game. This thing was passed at the end of March. And I just came back from the Florida Municipal Attorneys Association, and this was a major topic of discussion. Spoke with the city attorney of Boca Raton, and as a matter of fact, they're preparing an ordinance to require notice on these things. So other cities are handling it. I don't know what the legal department has talked with the other cities about with regard to this. Council, you've been getting a lot of discussion in emails about design exceptions, and particularly design exception ones, which are not noticed. And as you know, there was a great deal of discussion, and a great deal of time and a great deal of effort went through before the good neighbor notice is being amended and the notice of filing and the like. But it sounds like SB 102 was rolled into more as a as a process of additional design exceptions. I may be misunderstanding what I heard, but it's interesting how that was able to happen so quickly in the process, and the neighborhoods, perhaps with all the discussion that council's been getting about design exceptions, the concerns they've been having, that I haven't heard anything from them, and I don't know whether council has, about what their reaction to that would be. I'm concerned about implementation. I'm concerned about things being done administratively, that what are the criteria extrajudicial, or outside the purview of council. Again, my position, and I have to concur somewhat based on what I heard through this whole process from Councilwoman Hurtak, is one of my primary duties to not let council unknowingly abdicate its authority. And I'm not familiar with how other jurisdictions are doing this. I am not familiar with what the staff processes with implementation. But just the fact that it has to be administratively implemented does not mean the criteria is created by the administration.
Yeah.
That could be and should be perhaps a legislative function. It should be at least a policy discussion, because everything has policy implications. So I'm just concerned about kicking this can down the road with a motion to work on this. Its effective date was July 1st. I suspect, I don't know how implementation is even put forth. A fee has been attached to that, and that raises the question about the authority for implementing fees. And perhaps that was a council function in this department and was delegated. I'm not sure. It happened many years ago if that was the case. But normally, council is responsible for setting fees, but that's another issue. I believe council is handling that. So I do have a concern about SB 102. I do have a concern about mission creep. And I just want to make sure that council's concerns are addressed and not kick the can down the road. That's just my concern. And no offense to anybody, that's not your intention to do that. But what I'm saying to you is this is a very significant thing and it's a major policy matter. And the question is, what constitutes being done administratively? And again, with a city manager form of government, certainly those legislative bodies have been brought along a lot sooner than you have been at this point.
Councilmember Carlson, you had your motion, sir?
Yes.
So we have
staff, just to simply have staff come back and update us.
September 7th?
September 7th.
Do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Miranda, all in favor?
No.
Aye. Any opposed? No?
Motion carried with Hurtak voting no, Henderson being absent at vote, and Viera absent.
May I just want a little clarification from Councilman regarding the motion?
Yes.
What exactly, or what do you want the update on specifically, Councilman Carlson?
What?
Do you want us to report back, like if we have any applications at that time, or?
Yeah, ideally, there would be more feedback from the community, but at the very least, what I'd like to see is some kind of update on what other cities are doing in this regard. And then my purpose of putting this on the agenda is just not to defer the whole discussion, but to at least have a time certain that it would come back. In the meantime, we have to work with Marty to analyze it. Unfortunately, I'm spending a lot of money in legal fees looking at all this stuff. And every time I go to my lawyers outside, they disagree with the lawyers inside. And every time I push it, eventually the legal team inside accepts what my lawyer said. But I'm spending thousands of dollars to do this. It looks like on the budget thing earlier, I'm going to spend thousands of dollars on a budget person to go through to prove that what Mr. Rajero said was not only rude but wrong. And if I have to get a bond attorney to come in and prove that slightly reducing the water budget is okay and it's not going to affect our bond rating, then I'll do that. But in this case, what do we have? If there are disagreements among attorneys and departments, I feel strongly we need to protect the rights of city council. We spent 4 years trying to put rights back that had been taken away by the prior administration. And the charter clearly defines that. We have to do whatever state law says, but we shouldn't, as Councilmember Hurtak says, we shouldn't give up anything beyond that because that's the public's expectation. When these projects start going up, we're going to get blamed for it, even though we had nothing to do with it. And we're going to have to explain to everybody. That's why we have to have some kind of communication project now to let the public know that this exists, and because we're going to have all kinds of problems with it.
Councilmember Hurtak and Clendenin.
I actually did some research. St. Pete's doing nothing. They're just waiting. And I really think that is what I would like to see right now. I mean, not that they're doing nothing, they're not codifying anything, there's no extra that I have found out about in my research.
The law went into effect July 1 of 2023. If we get an application.
Yes, you have to take.
We have to process that. To suggest that we do nothing, like perhaps other jurisdictions, that would be against my advice. Thank you.
I'm not saying nothing, but I do not want, right now, I would like to simply follow the letter of the law. I don't, if we got an application tomorrow, I would not be okay with abdicating any of the extras. And I think that until we come back on September 7th, that is what we should do. Simply follow the letter of the law.
The law does not tell you how to do it. And what this is putting forth is a process for us to if someone came in with an app or wanted to use the Live Local Act on a piece of property, we have to know how we're going to handle that process. We didn't do it in a vacuum. We've done it with some of the people that's in this room. And so if the green space is the part that have you guys wired up, I really don't understand why, because you just approved the project at 30, listen, I understand this is more of a conversation about home rule and a fight with the state. But again, this is your community. You guys all ran on a platform for affordable housing. You've asked us to look at ways. You've asked us to look at policies. You've asked us to do this. This was thrown at us, and we've had to find a way to create a process that we would receive these applications and process them. This is what we're putting forward.
However, you talked about talking to many of the people in the room. The 7 of us were not a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the biggest issue I have.
Because the law told us what to do. Like the stuff that you were.
But you talk to people outside.
On
but
how
not
we're going to
us.
process it?
Yeah, but not us. And we do have a role. We make policy. It's what we do.
Okay.
Councilmember Clendon and Councilwoman Henderson.
Yeah, I think we're kind of like dancing around this, you know, just like this far apart on some of these issues. And I appreciate the position y'all are put in because of, you know, the state mandating this and you guys having to create procedures for this. I also appreciate Councilwoman Hurtek's position on this as well. So that's why I do agree that, you know, obviously you guys have to create a process. We have to follow law. We can't leave the city vulnerable. My suggestion, and I think probably requirement, is because until you get council buy-in, not to move forward on the above and beyonds until we have until you maybe come back in September. So I think the processes that you guys have created, obviously that's within the preview because the state legislature gave that to you. We didn't. So you guys move forward and prosper and with this mandate that has been handed down to y'all. And let's have further discussion on those. I mean, I only heard 2, maybe there's others out there, but the green space, the parking, like I said, I don't have a problem with parking. Oh, they have maybe the FAR, I don't know.
FAR is not.
Yeah, because that's the 100 or the maximum.
Yes.
Right. So, you know, I say let's take an IOU on those issues and move forward, and you guys do what you guys have to do. I mean, that's.
You want to make a motion?
Well, I mean, do we even need to make a motion?
Yes.
Well, if we're not doing anything, the state, if we're not approving anything.
Yeah, but something might come before September 7th.
But we're not approving anything.
What you're doing is you're being informed of what is going to be done administratively, or what is being proposed.
But they can't do something administratively that they couldn't currently do without our approval, and if we don't. So
That's a fair question. That's a question that I really don't have the answer to, frankly. Because my understanding would be, at least talking to other jurisdictions, that you certainly do have a role at least setting the parameters.
Well, and I think that's something that we need, because we're not prepared to do that today.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to do that at some point down the future, but right now, without approval, they just need to do what the legislature has assigned them to do. And which I think they've done a decent job of flushing out those issues and coming up with procedure to be able to deal with developers as they approach the city to stay within the framework of the law. Am I correct? Mm-hmm. You guys have a good handle on being able to just, you all can conform with the law, and maybe we could all get together and come up with a better process, you know.
I'm just here taking feedback, I'm listening.
Yeah, and that's, maybe I'm misunderstanding the point of y'all presenting this to us. This was my understanding, maybe we're not speaking the same, because my understanding was this was y'all just providing us feedback.
This was
information on the law, correct?
This was as a result of council's motion to present to you Senate Bill 102.
Yeah, so you guys weren't here asking permission to do anything, just to give us information on the law. So that's why I didn't feel like there was a need to make a motion at this point.
Well, then I have a question. I have a question for council.
Next.
I have a question
Point of
for.
order, I'm next.
I have a question for council then to pose to the administration. After this presentation, were they going to implement anything that has been presented that, without coming back to council for additional discussion? In other words, is there a process in place based on what you heard today and based on what was presented about how they intended to go forward administratively absent council's
So based on what you've heard today, are we good? We're just gonna stick with the letter of the law until we have further discussion? Is that good?
Or you need a motion?
Or do we need a motion?
Councilwoman Henderson, go ahead.
Hello. Let me take it under advisement and report back. Trying to do policy on the side talk and having Mr. Shelby interject his opinions. Let me take it offline. I understand exactly what you guys are saying. I understand what Councilwoman Hurtak is saying and the frustration with the state with overreach. And so I get it. Just give us an opportunity to come back.
Excellent. Councilwoman Henderson.
Yes, Ms. Travis, I just want to say I appreciate your report, and one of the things that I did hear is that it sounded like you took previous decisions that we've made into consideration on this dais to give the report that you've given. And also, I want to say this publicly right here and right now, you all are the experts in the field. We've hired you to do a job. And so when you bring it to council, we can make a motion to move forward with certain decisions, but I trust the process of the experts that we actually appointed to do the jobs that they do. And that's all I want to say.
Thank you very much.
I'm gonna make a motion.
A motion. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna just go ahead and make a motion to implement only the required portions of SB 102.
We have a motion from
Hold
Councilwoman
on,
Hurtak.
I'm trying to write while I talk, I apologize. To implement only the required portions of SB 102 until the September 7th meeting. That means no added stuff on the website, nothing like that, just what we have to implement by the state until we have the ability to.
What do you mean no added stuff on the website?
If, I know you're making a website, so the parking and the landscape and all that stuff that might have gone on for people to know about, just to keep it simply to the bare bones of what the law says until we all have a chance to discuss how we would like to see policy implemented.
We have a motion and a second from Councilmember Hurtak to Carlson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Absolutely, May.
You know, here's the thing, you're putting them in a posture, but what if they get something? How are they gonna handle it?
They're gonna follow the letter of the law.
What, ours or the state's?
The state's. That's all the state gave them to do. But the state clearly said in that law that all other normal rules apply. So that they can simply use what the city is already, their rules and regulations.
Is that what I hear factual? I'm not questioning you in any way, but that's what I hear that's factual.
I wasn't listening, sorry.
Huh?
I wasn't listening, I was speaking on the side. What was the question? I was speaking on the side.
What happens if somebody comes and hands you
Brings
an
the
application?
application? That's the process, that's what we were establishing is what that process, how we would handle it. Right now, I don't know.
What are you gonna do?
That's
You
why
got
I'm
three
asking,
choices.
that's why I'm asking you to
Accept,
just
not
give me some.
accept, and turn it down.
We can't turn it down because the
what I'm
law
saying.
is saying that we have to go forward. So what I think, Councilwoman, y'all asking me to do some stuff on the fly. Let me just report back to you, please.
Councilmember Carlson.
Yeah, two things real fast. One is, because we weren't included in the process, we're hearing this and so we need time to talk to all of you all about it as well. And September 7th is putting it farther out, but in the meantime, maybe we'll come up with something. The other thing is I saw Ms. Batzel stand up. Is it possible we could just ask her, did you have any advice?
This isn't a public hearing. This was just a staff report. It turned into a workshop. So, I mean, we're pushing it already. We had a motion from Councilwoman Hurtak, second from Councilmember Carlson. Let's take, we voted? I heard a nay from you. Are you good?
I'm good. Something's gotta happen.
All right.
Motion carried with Henderson voting no and Vieira being absent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's go to new business. I'm going to go first because I have to go. Thank you, sir. I'd like to make a motion that we send, and I'll draft a letter of support for Meacham Gardens, Meacham Farm, I'm sorry, Urban Farms. And I know they're looking at the county and other jurisdictions for help, and I'd like council to.
Second.
All right.
I didn't understand it. Meacham what?
Meacham Urban Farms is right here on the outskirts of downtown, right next to Paradise Missionary Baptist Church. And they give,
The vegetable garden.
yeah, they give
Yes.
tours, and very impressive in what they do and what they grow and how they do it right here in the downtown core.
And they currently have a 2-year lease with the school board, and they would like to extend it. So that is, if that is what the letter is in
Yes.
supporting, yes.
There's a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Good up, Councilman.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion. It's my pleasure to make a motion to present a commendation to Tampa Fire Department's Personnel Chief Anthony Tony Perez, who retired from the city of Tampa last week after serving 26 years with the Tampa Fire Department on Tuesday. We heard that he's now been appointed and confirmed by the Pasco County Board of County Commissioners to become the new fire chief in Pasco County Fire and Rescue. Congratulations are surely in order, and I would like to present this commendation to Mr. Perez on Thursday, July 27, 2023, in the beginning of a regular school council meeting.
We have a motion by Councilman Miranda, a second by Councilman Maniscalco. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Miranda, would you have any new business, other new business? Okay. Councilman Henderson?
I have no new business.
Councilwoman Hurtak?
Yes, I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna make a motion to have an FDOT representative appear on July 27th to give the quarterly update on projects within the city of Tampa, to include a report on the Southeast Seminole Heights project. I would also like to make a motion to have FDOT appear on August 3rd to present an update on Bush Boulevard.
Is that two? Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry,
yeah.
I'll separate them. My apologies. We can do the first one, 7/27.
Yes, sir.
Council, I presently count 14 staff reports for July 27th, and I'm wondering whether they can be combined, those two,
Well,
they can be combined on the August 3rd?
The FDOT is supposed to be the 10-minute presentation at the very beginning
Okay,
that we missed today.
I see. Okay.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a?
One in September as well?
Well, that's already, it's
I
automatic.
thought that was October 5th.
Yeah, that's, yes, no, it's August 3rd, was Luis Vieira's.
Nelson's already on July 27th.
Oh, okay, so Nelson is already on that, Mr. Shelby. So we're just adding this to Nelson's.
Do you want to amend your,
Report
you want
anyway.
to amend your motion?
Yeah, no, because the motion is to have a representative appear on July 27th along with.
So we have a motion. Do we have a
Seminole
second?
Heights.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Hurtak, a second by Councilman Carlson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
And I don't know, I think we already did the Bush Boulevard one. I think Lewis did that already, but if not, I would like to make a motion to have FDOT appear on August 3rd to present an update on Bush Boulevard.
We have a motion on the floor by Councilwoman Hurtak, second. Second from Councilman Carlson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
August 3rd?
Yes.
Motion passes.
And then I have a last one. Apparently we have a brand new GovQ service or a public record service. And before I was getting weekly updates on all public records requests, and that has stopped as of 2 weeks ago. And I was told that that is not an update that we can have anymore. And I'm not okay with that. So I would like to make a motion to have the city clerk provide a weekly report on all open and closed public records to all council members via email by 5 o'clock every Friday, starting on July 21st, 2023.
Okay,
Second.
can you start that over again? Can you say that again, please? You asked for it?
You
Yes,
restate,
this is
restate the motion?
My motion is, I would like to make a motion to have the city clerk provide a weekly report on all open and closed public records requests to all council members via email by 5 p.m. each Friday. This is something that I have gotten since I was a council member, and they've changed the system and say they no longer can give this to us. And I'm not okay with that.
I've had the same problem. I've been getting it for a long time too. I forgot how I first found out about it, but it's very helpful to know what public records requests are out there.
Do we have a second before we have
Second.
discussion?
I already seconded.
Okay, second by Carlson.
But
Okay, discussion.
The other thing is that it's very often that and it's nobody's fault, but a public records request comes in, and often there's more information that has to be gathered before they send it to us, and we can see it in this weekly update a week before, a week or two sometimes, or days before it gets to us, so we have an idea of what's happening. But also, we get to see what everybody's asking for the whole city, and it's interesting to see what's being requested out there by different parties. And I've made a motion separately that I think city staff asking for information outside their department should have to go through that. I go through GovQA because I think that that my request should be public, that the public, anybody should be able to see what they are, and they're listed in there as well. But suddenly staff has decided not to give it to us, which lacks transparency. And
Is it because of the new system or because?
Can I?
Yeah, excuse me, Andre Zellman, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I apologize. I just came down on behalf of the Public Records Department because I happened to be talking to them the other day about what we're talking about, and I'm sorry, Andrea Zellman, City Attorney. The GovQA system went into effect more than a year ago, so it's not a new system. What has changed is we recently lost our Public Records Coordinator, Christopher Smith. We have Jennifer Fuchs, who was kind of second to him, has now moved into his place. I'm not actually clear whether that's interim or permanent at this point. And they haven't backfilled her position, so they are short-staffed. They have had an incredible volume in the past several weeks of public records requests. And what they explained to me, that providing that monthly or weekly, bi-weekly, whatever they were doing, open and close, was something that it isn't required. It was just something they were doing as a courtesy. It's becoming incredibly time-consuming because it's not just a question of pushing a button. They actually have to go through, because sometimes embedded in the report is someone's credit card number or personal phone number or whatever. They have to make sure they're not accidentally disclosing information they shouldn't be disclosing. So what I was told is that they were temporarily suspending it or moving to a monthly or quarterly or whatever report simply because of the current pressures they're under. So what I would suggest is, rather than make a motion asking them to do it every week, maybe ask for a report on the status of it and the status of the public records process and what is involved in providing these reports, or something to that effect, because it's a bad time right now in terms of the time pressures, and obviously their first priority has to be providing public records rather than providing reports about public records. So that's what I would request on their behalf. Thank you.
I understand the pressure they're under, but this is a really valuable resource that I really look at every week.
Same here.
It keeps me up to date with some of the things that are going on in the city. And the email I got was, we no longer produce these reports. So saying that they're pausing them was not the information I was given.
Okay.
So no, I still request that we get these weekly. And I need the backlog of what's been done. Again, I mean, I'll click on them, I'll read through them. I use it as a serious resource. I find it something that's incredibly valuable to the work I do. It gives me an idea of what's coming forward, what we're looking at, different things people are requesting. So, I mean, if there's a way that they can provide a simplified version while they get back up to speed, but I'm already 3 weeks behind.
So just to be clear, I don't direct the Public Records Office. They're not, they're under the clerk's office, by the way. I just ran down here because I happened to have had that conversation about the reports and wanted to explain what I knew that wasn't necessarily available to you all.
Thank you for providing that.
It will be up to them to respond to.
Councilman
your
Carlson.
request.
Yeah, I think, first of all, it's a very valuable piece of information. Second, we could get the information by filing public records requests every week. But I think that motion is a good one because I think all city council members should have access to it. If you haven't had it before, you can decide not to read it, but it's something that all city council members should have access to know it gives information on what's happening in the city and what people are asking about.
Any further discussion? Motion to close?
I guess I would have to get one to see how great it really is. It's valuable.
Marty can send you one.
Okay, hearing no further discussion.
But did we vote on this?
No, we haven't voted yet. That's what we're gonna do now. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor? Councilman Randy, do you have something to say?
So if I ask for, I gotta make sure I know what I'm saying here. I go and I send a public record request to the clerk's office today. They get it, and then a week later, they answer it. So they say Miranda request report, Miranda got answer. But do they put what the answer to the question was? The volume of what I put, whatever it is.
No.
They just put my name and that I requested and so forth, and I got some number that they call number 418, file number 418.
Yes.
I don't know.
They also include what the request is, and then it allows us to also see how long it takes to answer a public records request. Oftentimes, there are some that are just hanging out for long periods of time. And that gentleman who's been coming in front of us for weeks, things like that, just keeping an eye on it.
Well, from that gentleman,
The gentleman that's been coming before you is in litigation with the city, and there's a federal lawsuit involving his discovery request. And as Ursula Richardson explained, he's trying to characterize it as a public records issue, and it's not. So I would just ask you to not take at face value some of the things that have been said with regard to that particular case.
Okay.
My concern before we
Councilwoman Henderson.
My concern before we vote is that this may be very taxing to the personnel staff that has to do this every single week if it's cumbersome to do it because of the pulling of personal information like, credit card or phone numbers and things like that. That's my concern with it. Not that I don't want you to have it, is that what if this person appointed to do this is not able to meet this obligation every single week because of everything else that they're assigned to do.
So
in
there's a
their
motion,
job.
there's a motion on the floor in a second. Are you
No,
looking
this
to
is the
amend?
discussion
But I'm saying, are you looking to
process.
amend the motion?
No, I'm not looking to amend
Okay.
the process. I'm just giving discussion to the motion. I'm saying that my concern is the person who is going to be told to do this for us on a weekly basis. Are they going to be able to do it every single Friday along with whatever their other responsibilities are?
They have been for
years.
for a long time, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but she said that we were sure, we don't have that staff member anymore. That she did say that.
I have never asked for one, and I'm not going to vote for it. I don't want to see him. I really don't, personally. That's somebody
She
else.
did say that. Didn't you say that the staff member is no longer there?
The staff member that was the head of the public records department recently left. The person that actually prepares the reports, I'm not sure that's one and the same person. But because the head of the department left, they're now short-staffed.
Okay, so I think we've heard a lot of this. I'm gonna say that I'm gonna vote against this, but I would be willing to revisit this in a couple of months as maybe the staff person catches up, because I think we've heard compelling evidence that maybe that, with the changeover in the staff. So, I think we've heard a lot of discussion. I call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Nay. Motion fails with, Carlson and Hurtek voting in favor, Clendenin, Henderson, and Miranda voting against.
Yeah, I'll just say this, I'm gonna file a public records request every week.
Okay.
So they'll still have to do the same amount of work.
Yeah, I'll do the exact same thing.
I'll do the same amount of work.
Mr. Carlson, did I ask you if you had new business?
I don't have anything.
And, okay, so I need to Did y'all have any new business?
I said no.
I need to hand this down to Mr. Miranda because I have new business. Okay, so I'm gonna do the boring stuff first. So, by request of the legal department, I make a motion to schedule a discussion of recommendations and options relating to section 27-61 of the city code for the September 28th, 2023 workshop. By request of the planning department, I make a motion for staff to present proposed conceptual amendments to the land development code offered as a part of the 2023 cycle at the August 31st, 2023 workshop.
Motion on the floor by Councilman Clendenin, seconded by Ms. Henderson. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passed unanimously.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to add to the October 26th workshop 2 items. One on discussion of PDs in the city, and the second, the discussion of hiring a budget analysis for city council.
There's 2 motions.
What day was that again?
October 26th. It's one motion, there's 2 items to the same workshop.
Have a motion made by Councilmember Clendenin, seconded by Mr. Carlson. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have unanimously.
Okay, I also would like to make a motion to request that the city mobility department take action to suspend installation of a sidewalk along Isabella and related to the testimony that we heard today, and with the potential hazard to the property and the tree that is on that adjacent property. So suspend installation of that, or work towards suspending installation of that. Work was related. There's 2 sides of that, the street. I think for background, I think that the sidewalk side on the new construction on the Ritz-Carlton property is appropriate place for sidewalk. The residential side, maybe not so much. So I would like the mobility department to suspend work on that and report back to the city council next week at our city council meeting about that action.
The motion by Councilmember Clendenin, seconded by.
Oh, I'm sorry. 27th, I'm sorry. Yeah. I know it is, but this is something that's kind of important, and I think it's a big construction project, and I think it's important to expedite it.
I have a motion by Councilmember Clendenin, seconded by Councilmember Carlson. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have unanimously.
And that's all I have.
Thank you.
And is there any more new business?
Yeah, receive and file.
I have a motion, receive and file. Motion heard. You guys have a wonderful afternoon.
Same to you, Chairman. Thank you.